Good evening, everyone. This is the Brookline School Committee for September 25th, 2024. Andy is here, but he is remote, so he has asked me to run the meeting in person, but he is with us and will join us when he wants to speak. Our first item is a consent agenda. I'll move the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Thank you, Sarah. Jesse?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Andy?
I think you called on me already, but yes, again.
Oh, I did. I have you down twice. Mariah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
And did I miss somebody? Val's absent.
I'm going to
Okay.
object if Andy gets 2 votes each time.
I know. I'm gonna correct that right now. Yes. Oh, I vote yes. That's who
Oh,
I'm
that's
missing.
that's the rule change I didn't tell you about.
Wait, I'm sorry, Suzanne. Can I just ask if the Pierce School project is part of the consent agenda?
Sure. You want to say yes? Go ahead, Stephen.
Was it part of the consent agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, then before, well, it's too late. We voted, but can I just ask about it? It seems to have been a more than usual marked up copy. I didn't know whether some of the questions were like 2 days for police detail, and then it says 1 day question mark. I just didn't know whether we were voting on the amended version or the version before the written emendations. I just like how
Helen,
that
I'll have you
was.
jump in. Aren't we voting on a change order?
It's a change order.
The
for
change order
20
though has some markings on it, and the markings
Yeah.
are not the same
So-
as what's originally listed.
I'm sorry, I didn't think it was going to be controversial, so I didn't look at it very closely. However, sometimes our own project manager, not the left field, but our Lap, Yan, who's our project manager for this and works for the town, looks at the bill and says, no, this is not acceptable and we don't include this. And there, and so we'll change. That's why some of the markups are. On this particular one, can I get back to you during the capital subcommittee
Sure.
report? And I'll take a
Thanks,
look at
Helen.
it. Maybe I'll remember.
It doesn't look like it would amount to very much, but it just suggested that some of the costs were being questioned or were in some flux. So I didn't know whether we were voting
I
on.
think, I remember.
the-
It was for, now I remember. It was for more excavation, testing, geotechnical testing. And sometimes if it was in the road, they would need a police detail to get the cars around and things like that. So that may have been what that was about, but why it was taken out, that I can't tell you yet.
Okay, thanks, Helen.
But it was for testing that we,
I think there were 2 or 3 things actually that suggested that there was a question around the units, like how many days of borings or how many police details. I just wanted to know whether we were going for what the final was.
well, usually what we're voting is what would be the final.
I guess what I'm saying is it wasn't clear to me in the document what the final actually was, whether
I
it was the
got
cost listed or the written amount on top of that.
Hmm.
I do see one note, it says approved as a not to exceed 22,687.
Oh, right.
So that's on
That may, yeah,
second page of the attachment.
right.
Can you tell Stephen that?
Yeah,
I heard
Stephen,
you. I heard you, Betsy.
it was a not to exceed, you heard? Okay. It was a not to exceed.
So maybe a little bit less than that, given that some of the costs were questioned.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
But they'll adjust that, throughout the project, we'll be getting sometimes change orders not to exceed. That's the way they can limit the cost, and it's important. The building commission put that on there when they were approving it, so that's
Thanks.
as much as I can tell you right now.
Okay, we're all set. Now we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Guillory?
Good evening. I want to start with a letter that I shared with our faculty later this afternoon, so some may not have even seen it at this juncture. But I want to start by thanking them for thank our educators for their incredible dedication and commitment that they demonstrate every day in the care for our students and each other. Our unwavering mission remains providing a rigorous academic and social education that fosters critical thinking and supports the social and emotional development of our students. I also want to fully acknowledge the complexity and significance of the issues our world faces today, and that global and national events can profoundly affect our students, our families, our faculty, and our staff. The one-year anniversary of October 7th and the subsequent war and enduring humanitarian crisis require that we remain unwavering in our commitment to support all individuals in our school communities, in particular our Jewish, Muslim, Arab, and Israeli students and staff. These events impact each of us in ways seen and unseen. Our role is to create an environment where students can explore, question, and learn within a framework of respect, critical thinking, and thoughtful discourse. Any conversation in our school must be rooted in a culture of care, with empathy and care at the heart of our mission. We will continue to tailor our support to meet the unique needs of each and every student. During the next 2 weeks, building leaders will share important updates about the support that will be available to students and staff during the week of October 7th. Our goal is to make sure that students and staff feel safe, they feel connected, and they feel cared for. Each school will have a dedicated space where students and staff can go to reflect, process their emotions, and access support from a counselor or a clinician. Our counselors and clinicians will work with individual and small groups of students who want or need additional support. We're asking that if there are any concerns regarding a particular student or a colleague, to reach out to the school leader or to a member of the clinical team. We are committed to maintaining this safe and supportive learning environment for all. Part of our shared responsibility is to minimize disruptions to the school day and reduce any impact on our instructional mission. As a public school system, our work is dynamic, our work is complex, and our work is ever-changing, but our primary purpose remains clear: to deliver high-quality instruction so that students can meet academic expectations and grow into successful, productive, and engaged citizens without prejudice. I echo the collective sentiments of some of the Commonwealth's top leaders, including Attorney General Campbell, Secretary of Education Tutwiler, and Acting Commissioner of Education Johnston. At this moment in history, it is incumbent upon our schools and our communities to take a firm stand against all forms of hate, recommit to creating school cultures that are inclusive, safe, and supportive of all students, and take proactive steps to protect students who are from historically marginalized groups. No child should go to school in fear of being targeted based on any aspect of their actual or perceived background, characteristics, or identity. I once again want to thank our educators for their continued dedication to the shared mission. Together, we will ensure that our schools remain safe places of learning, growth, and support for each member of our community. And so that's a message that I shared out with the faculty and staff today. It will go out to our broader community on Friday as well. So you all are hearing it just after our staff did. So with that, the remainder of our superintendent's update, and I'm also debuting my reading glasses for the first time. I'm a member of the Reading Glasses Club now. We want to acknowledge and celebrate Runkle, who is recognized for being named a 2024 Massachusetts School of Recognition. As part of the annual accountability reporting process, the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education identifies a small number of schools of recognition. These schools demonstrate progress towards annual accountability targets with an emphasis on performance of all students in the school and the school's lowest performing student groups. This year, Runkle was in an elite group of only 50 schools statewide to receive this distinction. We want to congratulate our entire Runkle community for their hard work in helping our students grow and learn. With that, I also want to say Dr. Fortuna and I will lead a deeper conversation about our MCAS results. We'll do it at a curriculum subcommittee meeting. So that is going to be docketed for a deeper conversation there. But I think the timing of the work that we're doing around literacy and the work that we're really focusing on synchronizing our schedules across our schools or getting those in greater alignment, all of those aspects, the work that we're doing in early education with our BEAT program, extending the BEAT day, all of these types of things are in support of deeper learning for our children. So, from the Office of Educational Equity, the Office of OEE is off to a great start. They have completed culturally responsive teaching in the brain with the Equity Leads group. Zaretta Hammond is the author of this book, and she actually addressed our leaders this school year at our opening convocation. So the Equity Office, the OEE office is again leading their equity cycles with FRR, Runkle, and Lawrence, working with middle school staff there. Additionally, members of the Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity in Education held a diversity recruitment event in Brookline, was the host of that back on September 7th at the high school, and the event as shared out by our OEE team was a resounding success. And I did speak with some superintendents from other communities, and they did mention that they came, and they are, again, most impressed with our facilities that we have here. So it was an opportunity to also showcase where and how our students learn. From the Office of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Fortuna is joining me out in visiting and spending time in schools. So she has blocked Tuesdays and Thursdays on her calendar this school year to spend the day in schools. She's excited to see the outstanding work in the PSB community of learners. During these visits, she spends extended time in classrooms. Oftentimes when I'm going in classrooms with the principal, it's for short periods of time. And my purpose is really, again, to see holistically what's happening. Dr. Fortuna will be doing deeper dives in terms of how the professional learning and the work that we're leading, how that's actually manifesting in the classrooms. And so we look forward to that continued work. She is many people have asked for this on the staff culture and climate survey, and we'll do a walkthrough of that as part of our strategic plan piece this evening, and she's extremely excited. Appreciation is abundant for the teachers who attended the curriculum meetings on September 17th. A big thank you to our principals and their partners for leading a fruitful conversation about literacy. So we've added are leveraging a portion of the contract for additional professional development time on Tuesdays for our K-5 educators. And so part of this is, again, in service of our literacy work and the training, the aspects of coming up to speed on the science of reading, and those aspects, that's the initial part as we then transition and then select whichever curriculum materials that we're going to go to. So this is an opportunity for that. So Dr. Fortuna shares that OTL is looking forward to a year filled with joy and learning, as am I. So I won't say any more about school visits other than I've also started my school visits. I started them last Friday, and I tend to spend about 2 to 3 hours. And when I go to the high school, I try to spend about 3 hours there just because it's a much larger complex. But I tend to spend about 2 hours at each school, spend some time with the principal, and then we go out and look at grade levels. And so this year I'm trying to structure it in such a way that I look at 1 to 2 grade bands at a time. My first few years it was somewhat sporadic, And so I think this time being focused in terms of looking at what's happening across a grade level. And again, it's non-evaluative for the teachers. I'm not there to evaluate them. That's not my role. My role is connecting with the building leader, asking them questions about what they're seeing in instruction and how they are interpreting that. So that's my purpose for being in the rooms there. And certainly seeing what's in front of the students and how they're engaging with them.
Can I just repeat what I think you just
Sure.
said to make sure I understood? When you're going to the schools this year, turn this on. When you're going to the schools this year, you're, for example, going to Heath or Hayes and seeing 7th grade, and then Runkle and seeing 7th grade, so that you're starting to see commonalities across. Okay,
yeah.
wonderful. Thank you.
And last but not least, there was a question that came up about private school enrollment trends here in Brookline. And I wanted to share sort of our historical bird walk. So the manner in which the grid is laid out, we have school year, private school enrollment, our October 1 enrollment, and then the percentage of the October 1. Now, this isn't necessarily apples to apples because I believe this private school numbers come in much later in the year. So we're not, our enrollment tends to actually peak around the January, February time is where we feel the greatest stretch. But this just sort of gives you an idea. Prior to COVID, sort of in Brookline's high year of enrollment at 7855, we were at 16.5% of our students choosing private school. Then you can see the COVID year, or the COVID shutdown year of 2020-21, when we see the percentage actually increase, but our enrollment dropped so significantly at that juncture. And then you can see each year, as our enrollment goes back up, the number selecting or opting for private at this point is starting to trend down. We'll continue watching this, but again, I think it's an opportunity for us to say how then can we strengthen what we're having here. But I've seen education competition in many ways across many communities, and so. But you have some very old private schools and very established private schools here that have steep reputations, and we're proud of our reputation as well. And so we want to do a stronger job of even sharing the great instruction and great learning that's happening within our organization, as well as the opportunities that students get exposure to as well. Helen?
So a long time ago, when I used to see these numbers, it was very interesting. It usually hovered around 13% for a number of years. And what was interesting about that number was, in looking at the schools and the numbers of students who went there, approximately half of them were parochial students. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's a different group of students than private school students in some ways, because we can't offer them what they get in their parochial schools, whether it's Jewish, Catholic, Christian. So I'd be interested to know how that is today, if it's the same or different. I think it's an important piece in the whole puzzle. But thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, and that, go ahead, Carolyn.
Sorry, I'm going to jump back to your sort of like school kickoff. I just want to say, I don't know if, I don't have elementary school students anymore, so I don't know if they're doing their back to school nights. But tomorrow is BHS back to school night, which is a highlight of the year. I haven't gone yet, but I can tell you already, it's going to be great. And it really is. My husband and I were talking to our son, who's a sophomore, about it last night, and saying every year we go, and we're just re-inspired and refilled with gratitude to live here in this place and be able to send your children to these schools. Sorry, I'm going to be clamped. And you go to back to school night, and the teachers are so dedicated and they're so enthusiastic. So that's going to be a highlight for me this week.
Awesome. Helen?
Following up on what Carolyn was saying, in years past, many years past, the school committee was also invited to accompany either a parent or get a schedule of a student and go around to back to school night. Maybe It's too late now, but, for next year.
Helen, you're welcome to join me tomorrow night. We can have a school committee member take a school committee member to back to
that's
school
the
night.
point.
You're welcome to join.
will.
I'm actually going to be at Lawrence School. I'm probably the only person who has both a K through 2 for Lawrence is tomorrow night as well as back to school night. I'm probably the only person who has a K through 2er at Lawrence and a high
You're
school.
going to do both?
Yeah. So,
That's feasible?
nope, but I will. Yeah, so.
Yes, I know that. That I was aware of, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure we can take, we will take people who want to come.
Yeah, then I would recommend it to anybody who doesn't have a kid at the high school, that it's worth doing.
Check it out. Well, I have my sons tomorrow as well, so I was trying to figure out how to make it work, but it won't. So tonight, we're going to turn our spotlight on excellence. I see our guests are here for this. To kick off this year's Spotlight on Excellence series, we would like to honor Florida Ruffin Ridley School paraprofessional, Ms. Tiffany LeGrand. Ms. LeGrand is joined this evening by FRR Principal Candace Whitmore. On Friday, September 20th, Ms. LeGrand performed life-saving measures for a student who was choking on an apple. Her quick response and action surely kept this from being a tragic event. I want to turn the mic over to Principal Whitmore and to Ms. LeGrand.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing us to be a part of this Spotlight on Excellence. And so before we present our recipient, Tiffany LeGrand, I just want to give a little background about our work that we're doing. So we looked at the results, the admin and I looked at the results from our culture and climate survey. And so we were intentional this year on building relationships specifically with our paraprofessionals and recognizing and uplifting all of the hard work that they do every single day. They're vital and they're a very intricate part of our school community. And oftentimes you see them running and they're the ones behind the scenes helping us get the work done. And so we are meeting with our paras every other week, and we're just having celebrations, doing professional developments, check-in certifications, and also sharing unique things about ourselves. And so this past Friday, Tiffany was able to share with her colleagues what her spotlight. And I'm just going to pass it over to Tiffany and say thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whitmore. So what I wrote for my spotlight was I saved a life once. So my student and I were doing math. It was around 9 in the morning. And we usually let our kids have snack while they work. It just makes, things a lot easier. And I noticed that he was coughing a little bit. At first, I didn't pay any mind until I kind of looked up and I saw that he was in a lot of distress. And I just thank God that I had a refresher course in CPR, and I managed to just get in gear and help out. And I'm just very thankful that I took that course and was able to stay calm and help him out.
Thank you, Tiffany. And you did the Heimlich maneuver, right? Make sure you.
Yes,
Yes,
I did the Heimlich maneuver.
Yes.
And that's what I did.
And Tiffany was calm. She executed very swiftly. And so this just shows the importance of, constantly recertifying our paraprofessionals and making sure that we just highlight and say thank you. And so that is our spotlight.
Yay.
Sarah? Yeah, and Sarah, and then.
I really liked how you both framed that to honor your work and also to open it up to the other paraprofessionals. I find that the paraprofessionals sometimes really set the tone in the classroom. The teacher might be a little bit more stressed out, a little bit less in touch, and the paraprofessionals help us connect, help the teachers connect with the students. They're sometimes the ones that have those really important relationships with the students, and we're just so thankful to the work, so thank you.
Mariah?
Thank you, Tiffany, and thank you for recertifying and for having that knowledge fresh in your mind that really let you be the person on the ground to handle that. That's wonderful. I was just wondering if your certification was offered as part of PSB training or somewhere else. And then my bigger question is, how do we make sure that everyone in the PSB community who wants that kind of certification or can benefit from it is getting, whether it's the first time or a refresher like you did?
I actually run Steps to Success, so it was a requirement for me to have my recertification every year. And I just think that I'm not sure if PSB offers it. I think they do, and I think that it's just I never thought that I would need to do something like that ever, and I'm just thankful that that I was able to take that CPR course. And I think that that should be a requirement for everybody because you never know when you may need it.
So true.
And Trisha and I had this conversation Friday, so we were talking about how to make this possible as well for those more that are interested.
That would be wonderful, because I believe I heard that there was also a choking incident at Driscoll last year, right? And so obviously, you know, this is, when we have this many people eating food, like this what happens. And so it would be wonderful to have it be something, a partnership with public health or whoever to offer that. And I'm sure other people in the community would be supportive and interested too. Thank you.
You were required to do it for steps because it's a EEC group, it's a early
Yes.
education. Yeah, they
Yes.
require, Okay, thank you.
All right, so with that, the Public Schools of Brookline Spotlight on Excellence is awarded to Tiffany LeGrand with extreme gratitude and appreciation for displaying dedication and courage during an emergency situation. The exceptional actions taken by you directly contributed to saving the life of a student. Congratulations, Ms. LeGrand.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. We're now moving on to public comment. I think we have one person, Ms. Vogt, if you would like to come forward.
Hi, everyone. My name's Marissa Vogt. I'm a town meeting member and I'm a Pierce parent, but I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the Safe Routes to Schools Task Force, which, as you probably know, is a group of parents and teachers and other community members. We have representatives from all of the Brookline schools. And we want to give our organizational support to the Pierce at Old Lincoln School daytime crossing guards to highlight the need for this crossing guard to help the students at Pierce safely get across the street to their playground at the Boylston Street Playground, which is across the state highway from the school. As you know, right now, the crossing guard is being funded during the day by the PTO, and this is not a sustainable or really acceptable solution. I distributed to you a photo that I took today. It's right before pickup, so there's maybe one or two extra people in the crosswalk. But this is, I believe it's a 5th grade class of kids crossing, and you can see how many people there are on the crosswalk. This is, when there were only 2 seconds remaining for pedestrians to finish. If you can see the little countdown timer, there were only 2 seconds left. This is just really shows you what it looks like when students are crossing this state highway during the day, and it just shows you how it's difficult to get a whole class across the street in time, and why it's really important to have this crossing guard during the day. And so we want to ask the school committee to please support finding funding for this. And I know school committee member Carolyn Thal had responded with some information about the Pierce School Building Committee and how there might be that is one potential or appropriate source of funding. I would just say that, this is a very urgent need, and so we're concerned that there would be a long and protracted sort of discussion either from the town or school committee or Pierce or the Pierce Building Project about who should be funding this. And right now, it needs to be funded, so it needs to happen quickly, regardless of really where the money's coming from. It shouldn't be coming from the PTO, and let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and just find the funding, fund the crossing guard, and figure out the details later. And then also just also in your emails or in your packet, there were some other safety issues regarding transportation to OLS that the Safe Routes to School Task Force just wants to highlight. There's just a lot of traffic. I know a tremendous amount of work went into getting the site ready for fall for students. And it's a really great space. My son is really enjoying second grade there. But the transportation side of things was maybe not quite ready for prime time. There's a lot of sidewalk issues and things that need to be addressed, which I know is not necessarily your exact purview, but it is still something that I hope the school committee will support. So thank you very much for your time, and have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Is it possible, I saw so many emails flying back and forth. Is it possible to just get a quick update on where that whole conversation is at from someone who knows? Yeah, I saw something from Amy Ingalls, and there were so many emails.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Is there a synopsis of where it's
I
at?
think when I get to the capital subcommittee report,
Okay, great.
I'll talk a little bit about Pierce. and
Thank you.
meeting.
Okay, thank you. We're moving along. Is Dr. Fortuna here for this? Okay. We're moving into discussion of district strategic plan.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, they are.
Here I am.
There you are, Jody. Hi, Matt. Hi, Christina.
I am so excited to be here tonight with my colleagues, Dr. Dubois and Ms. Hernandez, to talk about our strategic plan. And I get to introduce two wonderful speakers to you who are going to go over our school and family culture and climate survey results with you. So I wanted to start by saying, yay, we have a new format for our strategic plan, which is much more accessible than our old format was. All of our school improvement plans are directly tied to the strategic plan, and our foundational year has been completed. And if we go to the next slide, I can highlight some of what's different in our new presentation. We have lots of color photographs. We have a table of contents. We have more data about the demographics that we serve. Before each goal, we have a high-level statement of basically the philosophy behind the goal. And then on one page, we have the goal and the benchmarks for those goals. And it's all in a lovely, about 30-page document that is or will be available on our website. I want to thank Neil Gutka for really beautifying our strategic plan and making it more readable. Just to reorient us, we have 5 goals for our strategic plan. The first is, next slide, please, Linus. I don't have them all memorized yet. Our first goal is teaching and learning, and that is to increase achievement for all students by establishing, implementing, and regularly assessing a consistent, high quality, and challenging curriculum delivered using evidence-based practices. Community and connections, develop and implement a culturally responsive community engagement plan to foster connections among caregivers, schools, the district, and the community. And you'll see a lot of what Matt and Christy talk about tonight would really feed back into goal 2. Climate and culture, partner with families in the community to create safe environments that promote belonging. Our next goal is management and capacity building. Also, some of the recommendations and action steps will fit in here with developing resource management and capacity building systems that will ensure educational and organizational goals are timely and accomplished with transparency. And finally, our 5th goal is governance, and we want to design and implement an organizational structure and related information systems that will enable us to achieve the district vision. And with that, our spotlight tonight is really on goal number 3, climate and culture, where we're partnering with families in the community to create safe environments that promote belonging. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christy and Matt, who really have the meat of this presentation tonight.
Okay, I was going to say we could go to the next slide. Hi, everyone. We are so excited to be with you today to dive a little deeper into the climate survey and the results. We'll begin with the why behind the survey. So firstly, the survey meets one of the action steps under the strategic plan goal 3, which in our foundational year, so 2023, 2024, delineated that we would administer a baseline survey and create action plans surrounding the results. So the climate survey serves as that baseline survey. But the deeper roots behind our why are entrenched in this idea of belonging. Our theory of action is that strong perceptions of belonging will support staff retention and staff capacity to support students, as well as homeschool collaboration and partnership. This survey, it serves as a mechanism to collect detailed information about sense of belonging. So with that information, we can recreate what's working, and the discrepancies that we see for certain groups in that data provide direction as to where our focus should be and where our action should be. And one of the most important things is that this serves as the creation of a channel for the voices of staff and families to drive the actions of leadership. The question, what is the purpose, or what are we going to do with this data, comes up a lot. And so we wanted to address that here. What the data will do is what it's already begun to do is inform individual school improvement plans and thus support and structure the work of principals and school leadership, and to continue informing central office's work and action plans to ensure alignment across departments and that our work is supporting each other and responsive to the needs of our practitioners, school administrators, and our families and students. The staff survey measured 7 different elements. Those are school belonging, cultural awareness and action, district climate, school climate, staff administrator relationships, professional learning, and teaching all students, all of which are defined for you in this slide. And the family survey measured 3 different elements, those being school and district climate, family engagement, and school support.
All right, I will jump in. Thank you for that, Christy, and good evening, everyone. So I'm going to walk us through the results of the staff and family surveys. There's a lot of information here. There's a lot of data. We're going to work through some slides, and I'll give folks a couple of seconds to sort of take in the information that's on each slide. What we want to start with is anytime we do a survey, anytime you're engaged in survey research, the first question you ask yourself is the sample who participated in the survey, is that generalizable to the full sample that we're sort of interested in? In this case, you see that we had 438 staff complete the survey, and that's out of about 1,250 staff. And so our response rate was about 33%. And at a high level, when we're looking at a district level view, I think we can feel pretty confident that we're capturing a lot of voices, that the feedback is absolutely actionable. When you start breaking it down by areas, for example, by school, you can see there was a wide distribution there based on the number of folks who completed the survey within schools. When you start looking in, for example, with race, it does not match the racial demographics of our school staff. And so in the future, we're really hopeful that we can create the conditions to allow more staff to complete the survey so we can feel really confident that we're capturing the voices of every single staff member.
Excuse me, Matt.
Yeah.
When was the survey administered? I
Oh,
couldn't find
great.
it.
Awesome. So we completed this last May. Some folks did it into early June, but around late May, early June, folks completed it.
And sorry, Matt, it's Carolyn. I'm going to ask a quick question too. Was this internally designed or contracted?
Internally designed, yeah. So we had a working group that came together to build out the survey. All right, so we'll jump to our first slide here, and we're going to look at staff perceptions of school belonging. And what you're going to see in each of these slides is that in the corner, we offered some notes. Those notes are going to sort of pull out any discrepancies that we observed in the data, or areas where we hypothesized that we could have seen a discrepancy. So we wanted to give some additional information there. What I really want to stress is that in this presentation, as we're talking about these data, it's really important that we're staying at the district level. And the reason for that is, as we were building out the survey, it was really important that we were communicating to staff that it was going to be an anonymous survey. As soon as you start cutting the data based on an individual school and then based on your role within that building, you can really easily identify through the survey. So we're going to make sure that we stay at that 30,000 district level view so that we're really protecting the anonymity of our staff. But this first slide, this is a huge success. This is something that we should collectively feel really proud of. And so what you're seeing in that pie graph is that 87% of staff who completed the survey endorsed strong perceptions of school belonging. A couple of slides ago, you saw, Christy, that in our strategic plan, our goal was for all staff members, regardless of demographic variables, regardless of role, that we'd achieve 80% for all groups. And so in a moment, I'll talk about paraprofessionals, but we're really close already to achieving that goal. What's really important as we're framing out our work around school belonging is that it's very much a team sport. And what I mean by that is every single one of us carries really important responsibilities to doing the work to facilitate all of our experiences of belonging. I know myself as a leader, I know I carry really, really important responsibilities in this space. I know the things I do, the things I don't do absolutely impacts the conditions where staff can come together and experience strong belonging. And so what I see here is that clearly as a community, we're invested in this and we're collectively engaging in that work so that the vast majority of folks are experiencing really strong belonging. So one area you see 64% of paraprofessionals endorsed strong school belonging. And so that gives us a really focused area that we really want to think about how we can support paras and the really important work that they do. So we'll go to the next slide. And here is where we're sort of zooming out a little bit. So that first area with belonging, we're really tapping into those really protective features that are available for staff around really close relationships, feeling like they're understood and they matter when they're in their buildings. School belonging is a little bit, school climate is a little bit of a broader construct where we're sort of asking folks day to day when you're in your buildings, what's the overall feel of it? And so you see here, it's 64% of staff endorsed a strong positive school climate, and a little over a third fell in that medium area, and then very few endorsed low school climate. So again, that's really positive. Christy referenced school improvement plans. I know this is an area in particular that a lot of principals are really interested in using as a target for school improvement plans and are actively thinking about ways that they can help support belonging within their buildings. Support climate within their buildings. We'll go to the next slide. And here now we're zooming out even further and we're asking folks to describe their experiences of being an employee within the public schools of Brookline. So overall, how does that feel? And you see it's just over a third of staff are feeling really good about district climate. About half are in that medium area and 14% are in that low area. We have some thoughts around some action items that we can take to help support climate. Thematically, and we're going to talk about this often, communication, trust, transparency, and relationships came out over and over and over again as things that really help support district level climate. We'll go to the next slide. These next.
Suzanne, okay to ask a question? Yeah.
Matt?
Yes,
Okay, if
Matt.
we ask a question, or do you want to wait, us to wait? Is it specific to the slide?
Yes.
I mean, it's okay with me. Matt, is it okay?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Matt, Jesse here. Back on the school climate one. So if I look like at the lower right corner, my opinions are considered when decisions are made. More than half either, neither agree or disagreed or strongly disagreed. It's like 55, 56%. What are the kinds of cases in which at a school level staff would say, my opinion should have been considered but were not? I mean, that's more than half are saying they aren't. Do you have any examples you could provide?
Yeah, that's a great question, Justin. I think there's a range of things. As a leader, I'll sort of name there are times that you're in a position where you have to make decisions, and some of those decisions need to be made quickly. I think what we're tapping in though, when like decisions, for example, around scheduling, around when meetings happen, in terms of what supports look like for students. This is sort of tapping in. Does that feel collaborative? Does that feel participatory? So I think that's what's going in there. For the most part, I think principals are deeply collaborative and are really thinking about participation. One of the things that we've talked about as a group is just around communication and really being transparent about how it is that we come to decisions. So I think that's sort of what that's tapping into.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll jump one more slide. Okay, so these last two slides regarding the staff survey, we asked folks to think about and describe their experiences, describe their relationships, excuse me, with building level leaders. And then the next slide, we'll talk about district level leaders. And so here you see 56% of staff are feeling really good about the relationships that they have with building level leaders. And again, when we think about some of the themes that are coming out for folks who are hanging out in that green space, it's a lot around feeling known, feeling like people are seeing your work and that you also know the leaders that you're working with. A lot around communication and frequency and responsiveness and transparency around how decisions are made. And so those are themes that really came out pretty clearly. And so if we jump to the next slide, you'll see that this is our most significant area of growth. And so you see 7% of staff reported feeling really good about the relationships with central office leaders. 70% of staff are hanging out in that yellow area, that medium area. And again, what's coming out is a really fair request. It's a really important need of wanting to be in relationship with central office leaders, of wanting to feel known by leaders, of wanting to be seen by leaders. And so we referenced it earlier. So Dr. Fortuna pushing into school several times a week. I know all of us are collectively thinking about how we're more participatory in our work and participating within schools. And so that came out thematically of things that are really important for folks. And so we're definitely thinking about that deeply. I just alluded to a couple of themes, but I'm gonna have Christy jump in here and she'll talk a little bit about some more themes that we saw in the survey.
Thank you, Matt. If we can move to the next slide. So diving more into the main themes that emerged from the climate survey, there are three main themes. The first being trust. This was so clear in the feedback. There's a strong sense of value for leaders that are on the ground and a deep desire for more from leaders at every level, at the school-based level and at the district level as well. And it's not just a desire to see these people more, there's a desire to be known by leaders as well. One of the main themes that came up is that teachers and staff want to see district leaders spending their time in the teacher's room, eating lunch with teachers, or outside when teachers are at recess to eat, but spending that time primarily with teachers in the trenches rather than spending the bulk of the time with school administrators or being taken through the building by a school administrator. Another main point under trust was people really want to see transparency surrounding decisions at every step of the process. So not as a more reactive response, but as a proactive response from the beginning. Another main theme was communication, and Matt's touched on that a lot throughout. But there's a strong value placed on hearing from leadership, once again, school level and district level. And people really want clear communication surrounding the vision and direction of the district. They want more frequent communication, transparent communication, and they really want responsiveness specifically from central office members. And moving us into one of the last themes, which is discipline. Oh, also just with communication as well, I think one thing that came up in that data that people also want to see is there are issues, and staff and practitioners understand that there are issues that we cannot talk about at certain points for confidentiality measures, but they want to feel the value that central office members communicate to them. We can't talk about this. Here's why. They want to feel that acknowledgement. Another main theme that came up was discipline, and this came up as an area of growth for the district. People named inconsistency in disciplinary response and in follow through of the response. So follow through being communicating with family, the setting of a consequence for a disciplinary infraction, and the follow through on that consequence for the disciplinary infraction. People named wanting clear district-wide guidelines regarding disciplinary systems and procedures in order to feel that backing from central office in doing their work. And like I said,
Excuse me, Christy, we have a question here. Excuse us for a minute.
Sorry, Christy, thank you. When you say discipline, are we talking about discipline of students, discipline of staff? What are we referring to here?
we're talking about discipline with students.
Okay, thank you.
And like I was saying, what people really want to see is central office support in communicating and enacting these guidelines with the broader community. Next. And now giving it back to Matt.
All right, thanks, Christy. So, yeah, we're going to walk through the family survey now.
Suzanne?
We have one more question, Jesse.
Yeah, a question before we jump to the family section. Unfortunately, the slides here don't have numbers, but I'm going to go back. The school climate versus the district climate, these were filled out by the same individuals, right?
Correct.
These results are being extrapolated from the same 400 or so folks that your N that you showed earlier. Yep. Is that correct?
Correct.
So my question is, amongst those 438, how do you read the difference between the school climate and district climate? They're talking about how they feel in school, and then they're talking about how they feel the whole district is treating them, and yet there's sort of like this whole shift I'm seeing that the agreements are around 40%, on school climate, but then it shifts down to about a third, and a third that didn't agree or disagree. There's like a big shift. I just wondered if you might be able to comment on that.
Yeah, so I think again, thematically, I think it and so much of our work is based in relationships. And so I think what came out thematically is that in general, people are feeling really good about the relationships that they have with folks that they're working with every single day and within buildings, feeling really good about the relationships with their VPs and their principals. And, sometimes it's a function of the work, but having less relationship with central office leaders, I think that's impacting people's perceptions overall, how it feels to be an employee within Brookline broadly, but then feeling potentially a little bit better about being an employee at Hayes or at Lincoln or whatever their school is.
Thank you.
So we do have plenty of time for conversation scheduled. So I think now if you have a clarifying question, I think this would be okay to ask during this. And then afterwards, we can go back and really kind of dig deeper, if that sounds okay to people. Because we actually have a lot of time, so. Mariah, did you have a clarifying question? Yeah, wait, okay, we'll write it down so you don't forget. Or maybe that doesn't happen.
All right.
Go right ahead. Yeah.
Sure. So we'll jump into the family survey. And again, so you see here, we had 817 families complete the survey. That's about out of 3,500 families. So, relatively strong response rate. I think that's sitting somewhere around 23%. And going through the demographic variables are pretty close to what we see throughout the district. And so that definitely gives us confidence that this is really representative of what our families are experiencing. And so we'll jump into this first slide here that's looking at climate. As you see the questions, we are asking folks sort of a mix of questions that both represent how they feel about the specific buildings that their children attend and also more general in terms of district climate. This is a really strong number. And this is something that I think we should be very proud of. We care about this deeply, and it comes out in so much of the work that we're doing. And it's not an accident that 76% of families are feeling really good about the climate within their buildings and generally within the district. On the side there, where you see some of those breakdowns within different subgroups, those percentages mean the percentage of families within that group who are also endorsing strong climate. So for example, to give an example, so if you look at K-2, 90% of families who have a child within grades K-2 are feeling really good about the climate within their building and within the district. You'll sort of note there that there is a pretty meaningful separation between K-5 and then 6 through 12. Again, going back to relationships, again, going back to communication. Thematically, what came out is within K-5, developmentally, it makes sense that there's a lot of communication from teachers that go out to families within K-5. I have a kindergartner at home. I get daily communications. I get pictures where I can feel like, I know what happened with my son. Obviously, when people are moving into middle school, when they're moving into high school, there's really important developmental reasons why communication is going to feel different. Potentially, it's going to be less. But I think it helps frame how important being in relationship is with educators and how families really appreciate communication and really want that partnership to come together. This is a really strong celebration. Of course, we have work to do, but this is a really strong number to start with. The next slide, we're looking at family engagement. And this is more specific around some of the communication that we use with families and that sort of that direct communication with them. And so here, that number is at 70%. Again, I think that's a strong number to be starting with. This is another area that a lot of principals are thinking about within their school improvement plans. I know we as a central office team are also thinking about family engagement and what our messaging and what our communication looks like. To give an example of something that I've definitely been chewing on and something that I've talked about with staff, it's cut off a little bit there, but at the bottom row, you see if a student has done something well, staff contact me to let me know that it's happened. About a third of families are reporting that as a consistent practice. I would love to see that number increase. That's something that families really like. It's a really good practice. It's really important that we celebrate children, that we name and acknowledge when they're doing things that are conducive to their learning. So that's sort of a practice item that I think can help address some of the needs that families are having. And then the final area we'll talk about is around support. So we'll jump to the last slide here, or the next slide, I guess. So being in the Office of Student Services, this is something that I was particularly interested in. And here we're just under 2/3 of families feeling really good about the support that their children are receiving. And about a third of families are in that medium category. And so what we know, again, thematically, and what families are communicating to us is when they feel like they have a really good understanding of the support that's available to their children, when they have a really good understanding of how it is that kids come to access support, when they have a really good understanding of what the support looks like day to day, when they're in relationship with the people who are providing support, and when they have a really good understanding of how the support is working, or if it's not working, and sort of partnering in that space, that's just really helping folks sort of sit in that green area. And when all those structures are in place, that's what can make that support feel less positive for families. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Christy, and we're going to talk about some themes.
Quick clarification, Suzanne. On student support, I think you might have a y-axis error inadvertent there, Matt.
Where do you see that?
The first one, my student is appropriately challenged academically. The y-axis, I think, switched to neither agree nor disagree on the agree. So it makes the agree look at 47%.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for knowing that. Yeah, that's an easy fix. Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. Well, the first middle one.
No, I know which one you're talking about, but is the agree Just
Now,
the
the
wrong-
neither agree nor disagree should have been the
Yes,
third
yeah,
item
yeah.
in the y-axis. It was a mistake.
I'm asking, yeah. What's the percent next to the neither agree nor disagree? Should that be
Is it-
17% or should that be
No,
47?
no, no. So is this an ordering? So all the numbers that are next to the statement are correct, they're just ordered incorrectly.
Yeah,
That's easy.
I would just also say thank you for sending this out in advance so that I could read through the whole thing before the meeting, so that was good. Would be hard to catch, when the slides are zooming by. Thank you.
All right, so moving into an analysis of the main themes that came out of the family survey, the first main theme that came out was that families want additional transparency and information on how issues related to discrimination, harassment, and bullying are handled, which jives or aligns with one of the main themes that came out of the staff survey. Families also, they appreciate positive, like Matt has said, appreciate positive and proactive communication and want more. And also another theme that came out is that families really value events such as International Night and PTO activities as really positive ways to build a sense of community. And so those are the main themes from the family analysis. And then I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Fortuna, who's going to take us through a few action steps.
So I think we've been signaling that we've already started to take action on some of these, but we're really working on some key areas. The entire central office team is working on increasing our time in schools. Our Office of OEE does this through their residency program. Ms. O'Connell is always in schools, checking on various programs. I've really worked to rethink my schedule for the year to be in schools. We're really also trying to increase our participation in teaming structures, faculty meetings, student intervention meetings, consult teams, so that people know that we're listening and we're paying attention to when they're having issues and what the actual work on the ground is. We're working on increased communication from the central office. Dr. Guillory has started to send out a Wednesday staff bulletin to all teachers that kind of highlights what we're going to be talking about at school committee that week, and also some happenings in the district itself. We finally have a fully staffed human resource department, which has made an exponential difference in all of our lives, because human resources is now fully handling all the human resource issues that come up. And the rest of us are really able to focus on our core areas of the organization. We are including goals around climate and belonging within all of our school improvement plans. And those of you that heard that marathon night of presentations, heard celebrations and the inclusion of these goals. And we're really trying to target our professional development based on educator needs. So we're really working to listen, or trying to listen to our educators and their feedback on the professional development that we are offering them. So these are some of the immediate steps that we're taking right now to respond to our staff survey results. And then back to the strategic plan for a minute, we are going to be providing checkpoints along the way. So each of the deputy superintendents is going to provide, and the executive director of the Office of Educational Equity are going to provide status updates quarterly on the strategic priorities that affect their area. And I took the liberty of recommending some school committee dates when you might expect these, and those are listed on the slide. And then we're really working, just like in tonight's presentation, we really spotlighted strategic goal number 3. we're really going to work to explicitly tie all of our presentations back to our strategic plan so that everyone, the community, the committee, is aware of what's happening, that our strategic plan is a living document, and that we are truly taking it seriously and communicating out with transparency what's happening with it. And I believe that's it for the presentation portion. And now we'd be willing to take any questions or comments that the committee has.
Yes, so that's great. Thank you so much. There was a lot there. Again, thank you for presenting it to us beforehand. At least this is my second time. I probably need a third or fourth, but I do appreciate it. So thank you for that. What I'm thinking is, well, we could just go randomly, or we could do like the first half and see if there are any questions or thoughts, and then go to the second half. I did the two halves as in family and staff. So should we maybe stick with one area?
General question?
General, then let's do general questions to begin with, and then see if we need to go deeper. So we'll do Helen, and then we'll do Mariah. Go ahead, Helen.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much for this presentation, for all the hard work that goes into it, and to the people who answered the questions, because that can also be difficult to find time to do that. I'm curious, in the past, we used Panorama. Matt, you could probably answer this question, to do these questionnaires. Am I correct? Or am I, yeah.
Yep.
But you said these were not part of that.
Yeah, so Panorama does offer staff surveys. We didn't really feel like it met our needs, and so we did put together a working group to design our own survey. We still administer it through the Panorama platform, so they house the data. But it was a survey that we constructed based on what we were really interested in and what we thought was going to meet the needs of educators.
And the same thing's true with the family one, or the family one we use the
Same deal. Yep.
But the student one, we do use Panorama. Or not.
I know we oftentimes describe it as the Panorama service. So we use that as the platform for administration, but we've done a lot of building out of the survey with within the district to meet our needs. So again, Panorama is the platform that we use, but those are surveys that we have definitely been informed a lot with the research, but we've designed them to meet our needs.
So one more question, if I might. So do any of our surveys, are they comparable across the country, across Massachusetts, or it's not feasible? Huh?
Like in terms of comparing the results to other districts, or to comparing the survey to what other folks use?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
So in terms of, can we compare the survey that we use to what other folks use, or can we compare the results to other results?
The results.
Yeah, there's not, that's a wonderful question. To my knowledge, and there might be folks who can correct me, I've not seen super public places where you can sort of in a really easy way see, for example, throughout the Commonwealth, here's the average percentage of belonging. That's a sort of a hard thing to compare. That'd be great. That'd be wonderful. I know we can tap into research, and when you look at research overall with belonging, it's not great. It doesn't paint a wonderful picture for a lot of places. But I think for us, what we're really guided by is really thinking about what we need in Brookline, what our staff need, what our kids need, what our families need, and using that as a sort of an organizing light. And what I'd say, I think I've said this before when we talk about kids, I think if we do compare to other districts, if we compare to other towns, I think we'll generally compare pretty well. That's never good enough, right? That's never going to be our goal, that we have some measures and metrics that we want to hit, because that's what our kids and our families and our staff deserve.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to Mariah and then Stephen. Mariah? Oh, it's answered. Okay. Stephen?
Thanks, Suzanne, and thanks everyone for this presentation. I just have one general question, which is to ask for more about the link between this survey and the strategic plan. So you refer to it as a living document. I think we've discussed it as a living document. I was looking a little bit at the strategic plan as you were presenting out. And there's a lot of really rich data here. I'm wondering what kind of processes you envisioned to iterate on the strategic plan as you continue to gather data from these groups? And specifically, are you thinking of amending the strategic plan for FY25, aka year one, which is what we're in right now?
So I think, Stephen, great question. I think that's something that we really need to look at as we gather more data across different data sources and how we are going to adapt the strategic plan and make sure that it's truly a living document. So we don't have a distinct plan right now for doing that, but that's something to be determined by the team, because we do want these results to be incorporated. We want people's voice to be incorporated into the plan, and this was an excellent mechanism for achieving that.
Okay, so for now, we should just continue to refer to the initial strategic plan, and with the expectation that at some point there'll be adaptations, but not yet.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Sarah.
So I have two things, and they're both under family engagement. I wanted to make sure that during this discussion, we said again, something that we've referred to in the past, is that when you look at family engagement, that seems to be the way to get at addressing issues around attendance. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that again and remind everybody that that's why the superintendent has family engagement, or that's one of the reasons the superintendent has family engagement in his evaluation goals, and it's one of the reasons why we talk about it, is because it's a increased family engagement brings kids to school more, is what the research says. So wanted to get that in. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about family engagement at the middle school level. So one of the points that Matt made was that parents would appreciate to have calls home to hear about good things that their students have done, right? That sounds a little bit more like a elementary school thing, and so I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what family engagement, what the things are that we're looking for the middle school. And my neighborhood school happens to be the Lawrence School, so I know best what they do. And one of the things that our middle school teachers are doing at Lawrence is, and then probably across the district, is that they're calling home at the beginning of the school year from the homeroom to say, hello, I'd like to talk to you about your child. And if they don't reach the families, then what they do is they send an email to just establish that communication. Also in 6th grade at the Lawrence School, we see a newsletter go out, and it talks about what's happening in curriculum across all the different subjects. So I just wanted to get that in there. I'm always sticking up for the middle schools, so thanks.
Carolyn.
Thanks, and thanks, everybody. This is great. I love what Sarah just said about middle school, just always important too. And I do think the idea of the parent-teacher contact really drops off. And I know there are complicated contractual issues there, but the more that we can have that happen, I think it's helpful. I have a question, and this may just be my misunderstanding, and it's a little sort of wonky, but I see in action steps and maybe in the introduction also, inclusion of goals around climate and belonging within school improvement plans. And I guess the way I heard this was that that's going to be sort of an expectation. My understanding, which might not be complete, of school improvement plans and site councils is that they include educators in the building, community members, school leadership. And I always think of the school improvement plans as very local and sort of ground up. So I'm just interested in sort of how the notion of and I'm not saying this is going to come out a little wrong, but basically that the district wants these included in school improvement plans. Is that what you're saying? And is that consistent with the school improvement plan process. And I'm not saying that I have any problem with this notion, but I'm wondering how that sort of fits with the process, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Carolyn. Great question. It does fit with the process because we're not telling the school improvement council what the goal has to be. What we're saying is that there should be a goal included around climate and culture. And we find that all schools generally want to work on their climate and culture and are continually using a growth mindset when it comes to climate and culture. So that it's a very realistic goal to have included. We're not telling people what the goal has to be. We're just saying, please include a climate and culture goal into your school improvement plan.
Mariah?
Thanks. First off, I just want to repeat how wonderful I thought the school improvement plan presentations were last week. And I know we didn't get the chance to do them at full school committee, but most, if not everyone, was there of the committee, and I thought they were spectacular. So thanks again for the work that was done to pull those together, and what we're talking about tonight, which is what I thought was another, like, just a terrific aspect of them, was their tight integration with the strategic plan. Because when we're all sort of aiming in the same direction, things really start to move. So that was wonderful. I have two questions. The first one was on the school belonging. There was one pocket of paras that didn't meet the 80%. I was wondering if there were other demographics that also did not meet the 80% school belonging threshold?
That was the only one.
That was the only one. Okay, thank you. And then I think my question's a little bit of a repeat of Stephen's, but I'm going to ask it again, and you can tell me asked and answered. So the school belonging, your goal in the strategic plan was school belonging of 80%. But that looks like you achieved it. It's not really the issue. And so I guess I'm specifically asking, will the goal in the strategic plan change? I'm not asking when. I think Stephen was asking when. I'm just wondering, is it going to change?
So Jody and I talked, Dr. Fortuna and I talked about this at our check-in, and where we were at the time when the plan was built, we didn't have this foundational data. So she and I talked about the need now to look back at that and say, if we've already achieved the target, we can't, keep our finger on the scale in this regard and say, oh, we're mission accomplished as such. But what then makes sense? Is there another aspect, or if we go back and look at sort of the work that, and you all were on the teams there, but look at other aspects of what needed to, or what was being surfaced at that moment to say, is this truly the essence of that? Have we captured it in the right way? Or is there something else that we really need to hone in here? So that's part of that refinement process.
Jesse?
Yeah, question going back to student support. I see 10 questions on the slide. I'm assuming there were more questions than the 10 for which the graphs are shown, or were there just 10?
I think I got them all on there.
Okay, so I'm wondering how from there, unless it's the bottom right one, the 10th one at the bottom, the theme about families wanting additional transparency about issues related to discrimination, harassment, and bullying. Was that a direct question that families were asked in one of those questions? And gets me to my other second question, which is that this was a survey that was provided to families, caregivers, and things like that. Is it available to the school committee so that we can read all the questions? Because they all get cut off in this presentation in the graphs.
I'll show you. Did you see the individual items that were asked?
Yes, please.
Sure.
And then I guess I see the feedback on discrimination, harassment, and bullying, but what is the action steps didn't really discuss how those as one of the big three, let's say, are going to be addressed, since they're unfortunately, there's a frequency with which these things are happening in the district. So it's on a lot of people's minds.
So I think with that one, Jesse, is the work that's being done on the protocol that's being developed, and Some of you may be aware that the AG, the Attorney General's office, also put guidance out to schools. So we're actually reviewing the protocol that we've developed internally against the new guidance from the AG's office, and Town Council's office is working with our team on that. So that's one of the attributes that will directly address that. And I can't recall at the time if that surfaced as part of the strategic plan work itself. I know that it's after. Exactly. Yeah. But to answer your question, that's an independent body, but will address this measure itself, not necessarily in the plan itself, but we have this protocol that we're working on as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I am going to jump in, because then everybody except Andy has spoken, and we'll see if Andy wants to speak. So I would just say that I think a lesson learned perhaps, and it's understandable, that it sounds like staff wants to see central office more, but many of our central office people are relatively new. I mean, like almost everybody, I guess. And so it makes sense that now is the time to get out there and to really get to know the staff and for them to know central office. So I'm very pleased that that's a focus, and I think the staff will be pleased when they see you, and you'll start to learn who they are, and they'll learn who you are here. So I think that's great. So, but I think it is understandable with the turnover we've had at central office, that the staff do not know central office as well as certainly as they know their people in their own buildings, and that seemed to be reflected in the results of the survey. Did you want to say something, Matt, or no? No, no, fine. And then the other thing I want to say is, in terms of staff and community being engaged in decision-making, there are ways that could be set up formally where that happens, and we're starting to do that. So in some systems, they have instructional leadership teams where staff works with administrators in the building, and they make decisions for the building. There are the PLCs, professional learning communities, where staff works together, and we're starting to do that. So I think as these new formats come in and new opportunities come in, that the staff, again, will be feeling that their voices are heard and that they have impact on decisions at the building level. And also at the central office, certainly we did that around the strategic plan. And I think if we continue to do that, that means good things are going to continue to happen. So I just want to throw those things out there, things that we are working on, and it really should make a difference as we go forward. So thank you. Thank you for all the work. Okay. Just a second, Sarah. Andy, did you want to ask anything? I'm going to give you a chance if you want to.
Thank you very much. No, I don't have anything to add to what's already been said, just that I also appreciate this very interesting presentation. And I think having frequent brief check-ins, status updates about strategic priorities sounds great, rather than less frequent, but more high pressure updates and reviews. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so I have Helen that wants to say something, and then Sarah. Okay, Helen?
Yeah. One thing I was just thinking about, and I'm not sure it's information we need to know, but I was wondering if we look at this information by school so that you could see, is there a school that's an outlier or not? Are they all around the same? To see whether there's work that needs to be done on a more individual level, school-wide level, rather than, district-wide. It just sort of occurred to me that you probably have that. I'm not sure we want to publish that because the ends might be too small. It might not be really indicative. There may have been one issue in a year that could cause things to skew in ways.
I think you've just done a great job of summarizing why we presented at the district level here, and the work that we will do as a district team and as a school district team on the local level.
That's what I was hoping.
Sarah?
My question is actually for you, Suzanne. I really liked where you were going when you were talking about increased opportunities for educators to be involved in decisions. So I guess I have a question for you and then a question for Dr. Guillory. I'm not aware of how educators were involved in the strategic plan. So could you go over that?
Yeah, I mean, Helen, you can help me, and Jody can help me, but there were a number of representatives from schools that were part of that. So there was a big group that,
Different grade levels, different, at the middle school and the high school, different subject levels, subject areas. There was guidance, there was a couple school committee members. Obviously, the district leadership was there.
this is when we were coming up with
Guests
the
at
five
times.
big buckets. And so there was input from maybe 40 people.
At least.
I mean,
This
this
room was packed.
Is that a little bit of model that we follow? We followed it for the strategic plan. Was it a new idea, or is it a model that we follow for other things too?
No, this one was a new one. The time before was a smaller group that met. I remember the room at Old Lincoln, and there were maybe 20 of us there at the most. This one was much more diverse, much more wide, across the system, touching on many.
Fairly deliberate, probably.
Yes, I think it was. And we had both times we had a facilitator. It was just different ways to.
So our definition of stakeholders does include the educators. It sounds
yes.
like.
God,
We
yes.
asked the EU for representation.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly which educators were there, or what grade levels, or what schools, but I remember they were in the group.
Jody, did you have anything you wanted to add? We don't really.
No, you ladies did a wonderful job of summarizing. Thank you.
And then for Dr. Guillory, so I see the feedback and themes that they came up with, and they talked about discipline. And discipline's, such an interesting conversation here in Brookline. We have a way of looking at these things. And so I just thought if there is a way that we involve staff in issues of discipline, I'd love to hear about it because I'm not aware that we do.
So I think one of the things that gets brought up anytime you talk about discipline is the inconsistency or the belief that student A does something and gets this punishment, student B does the same thing and gets this punishment. So there's that inconsistency that people observe. And I think one of the things that that is going to be helpful to this end is the work that the policy subcommittee will do as it's going through subsection J, which is all about students, and the code of conduct and those types of things as well. So I think that will be a helpful infrastructure around that. But it's this notion of inconsistencies within the same building of a perceived or the same sort of a similar infraction. That and what we find is that comes down to oftentimes race. A student of one background does something and gets a small or low-level punishment, and a student that's often of color does a similar type thing and gets a higher or different disciplinary infraction. And so principals are certainly aware of that body of work, and we're calling that out, calling it up, again, because it's an opportunity for our system to behave in a more equitable manner and consistent manner as such.
That's super important to this conversation, and I'm really happy to hear that answer. And the other thing that I wanted to know is, just like we're trying to involve educators in the strategic plan, could you tell me if there's any opportunity for educators to be involved in how we respond to discipline issues?
An example that I can think of right off the bat is the work that the Driscoll team did in its middle school to actually look at their middle school infractions, and the middle school teachers actually work with the administrators to come up with their code of conduct, essentially. So that one I know more specifically about because Principal Euclid and I had deep conversations about it last year when they were working through that. So that is a model also as well.
Sorry to keep on insisting on this so much. And then could you just finish up, Suzanne, when you referenced PLCs being a way for educators to have decision-making in leadership or in policies in schools. Could you talk a little bit more about that, just so I understand that better?
I will give it my best shot. So I also would like to add that PBIS, Positive Behavior Systems, is also another way for staff to be involved with discipline.
Sorry, I love that, but I don't understand what you're saying. So tell me about that.
So it's a system that they're using in different schools. It just formalizes, the code of conduct. It formalizes pathways to go for retribution or reparations and that kind of thing. And it really focuses on positive behaviors. And so by getting all staff involved in buying into this, which they help develop, then the entire staff is buying into it. And so they have a say in that. And so some of that came up. PLCs are professional learning communities. We often talk about data and we talk about curriculum. However, they also can do data such as Dr. Guillory just referred to, could be data on discipline and infractions. And you can have a conversation in your professional learning community. What is the data? What are the infractions? What's happening? What are the results? What are the follow-ups? And as a staff, they can decide, if where they want to go with it. So it's professional learning communities tend to be small. And so they might be grade level, or it might be a department. But then they can go to the bigger community of the school and present something or say, this is what we've been talking about. This is the data that we've looked at.
I hope there'll be opportunities like that. That's great.
Yeah, there should be. I mean, they're starting to do more of that. So I think there will be.
And I think also with the discipline piece, the student experience in that, the students will often say, I did the same thing and I got a different punishment than this person as well. So that, again, is, and that's not a new concept, it's just not unique to Brookline. Been a principal a long time, and I've seen it in many different systems as well. But again, it's this notion of calling it out or putting a flag down and saying, this is the body of work that we're going to engage in and work toward. And so it's not a condemnation. We need to do better about it as such, and so we know that this is a body of work that we have to tackle as well. And so my belief is that people are well-intentioned, but when we see inconsistencies, we also need to process and dig into those as well.
Yeah, Stephen?
Thanks, Suzanne. I'm sorry, really quickly, Dr. Guillory, I didn't quite catch your answer to Mariah's questions. I just wanted to ask it again. Was the resetting of year one targets for this goal on the table or not? I just missed the answer. I'm sorry.
So what we said was, now that we actually have the data coming in, we're going to actually look back at those to see what's the true baseline as such. So when we put these numbers out, we didn't have the data, so we picked numbers that we thought where we would be. And so at this juncture, we now have baseline numbers that we can actually put as our initial marker. So yes, that.
So does that mean that it's on the table that we might change the targets? I don't have a preference.
We'll look at that as well, but okay. I also want to be respectful of the body of work, the group that actually did this body of work, but also look at because we made hard choices about what to actually put in. We couldn't put everything in, so we want to look back at what might be a more succinct or better descriptor as well. So we'll take a look back at that. But what I don't want to do is attempt to rebuild the strategic plan at this juncture as well, because we've already gone through a deep process about that, and I don't want to. So I would look more at where numbers may need to change, or if there's
not
some
changing activities, but maybe some of the benchmarks.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Carolyn?
Thanks. I have two more quick ones. I shared Jesse's question on the feedback themes, I think on both of those slides, sort of where those came from. Were there, and sorry if I missed the answer, were there open response questions that led to these themes, like events such as PTO activities were highlighted or families want, or that's just interpretation of the questions that we see here? And then I'm going to have another quick thing after.
Sure, yeah, so I think it would be helpful for us to provide you the full survey so you can see that. There was some space for folks to provide some open response, but I think you having the full survey will be helpful.
Okay, and I'm sure I did it. I just don't remember exactly. I promise I did it. And then, and this is really an amazing amount of information. I'm super appreciative. I'm just going to point something out on the ones that are the family ones, I think, and then the column on the right with all these different demographics. The last box that says family student, Jewish, ELE, LGBTQ, and Middle Eastern. Israelis are Middle Eastern. So just wanted to, I'm not sure where those, and I don't see Middle Eastern in the demographics. Maybe it was there somewhere, but just wanted to kind of throw that out as food for thought.
I'm just really, I just want to say that school culture and school belonging, like that doesn't happen out of nowhere. And these scores are amazing, and it really reflects so much hard work by building leaders and colleagues, and that's just spectacular. So, you know, there's lots of opportunities to improve, and there's some amazing work here, especially as we think about where people are at, Matt, as you've talked to us, you know, where people are at following or through COVID. And really, this reflects such strong communities. So congratulations to everyone who's working to make that happen.
Also, just one thing, could I just share one thing to Carolyn's point, that
Sure.
you didn't have to choose one. It didn't have to be like you could identify as Jewish or Middle Eastern. People could choose both as well, so that people can have a space where the complexity of their identity is honored. And where they can choose to disclose what they want, but it wasn't, you can either pick Jewish or you can pick Arab. People had the option to choose both and identify as best represents themselves. We really wanted to preserve that here because we know people have a lot of complexity to their identity. So just wanted to clarify that.
Yep, thank you, except Carolyn's on it. Okay, seeing no other hands or questions or concerns, thank you so very much. There's a lot here, and I'm really looking forward to these quarterly updates. I think it'll be really great. They're already in the calendar, so thank you for that. It's great. Okay, you're all welcome to stay as long as you want. Oh, but you certainly don't need to. We're moving on. Mariah, this is you? The first reading of the budget guidelines?
I don't know if we're in the first reading or the second reading, because we published one, it doesn't matter, I guess, where we talked about it last week at finance, but then we didn't talk about it. We had it on the docket. It doesn't matter. We're in a reading. So you all got earlier today, I think, 3 documents. One was I'm going to call it the second draft. I don't know what reading it is, but it's the second draft of the guidelines, mistakenly labeled first draft, but they are the second draft. And then there's a document that's from Jesse, which you have in front of you, which is the table. And there's a document from Carolyn, which is another not table. Oh, and a document.
But you may have incorporated.
I already incorporated it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. If it's the same one did he CC you on the one?
Yes, that was the same.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yep. So I sort of wove that in a little bit in that I pasted it in for us to discuss.
That's in like alternative intro?
Yeah, the alternative intro, and then at the end, I put in Stephen's bullets, alternative suggestion for fewer priorities.
Yes.
And then I highlighted a sentence on the first page, which I think Stephen also called out, and I thought it was worth talking about. So there's that, and then there's also one additional priority I put in that came from Helen. I sort of put I don't know if I got your words exactly right, but I put something in for discussion. That's 1B now. That's for fiscal year TBD, for fiscal year XX, return world language as a K through 12 program. So I don't know that we're gonna come to like a document right tonight. So I think I want to throw this out there as a couple of maybe big philosophical questions to then take back, if I'll take back and try and work on for another draft, if that's okay with people. So, and then I know Carolyn and Jesse both provided detailed comments, which aren't like included in here. So I think we can also then, and everyone can throw in additional comments. So I guess my big philosophical questions, I'm going to start with the highlighted sentence.
Mariah,
And yeah,
can I just ask you to start with your philosophical approach to this? I think it would just be helpful to set a foundation, just to have you provide your basic thoughts around what budget guidelines are to do.
okay, well, I don't know if it's up to me. I feel like this is a committee
Oh, I'm
thing, but
sorry.
yeah, no, I mean, it's okay. I'll try and articulate what I think, but I think the idea is, and Susan walked us through this at our August 21st meeting. She talked about how there's sort of some formative documents, the strategic plan, these guidelines, the budget, which she also referred to as the annual educational plan, which was very important to make that connection to me. And I think also then there was maybe also the capital plan was another part of this cycle. But that how they're sort of part of the foundational documents of the district to really guide the process. So I guess that's how I'm thinking about this, is just as one of those foundational documents, in that it complements those other documents. I'm not sure what else, I don't know, that's my philosophy of it.
This is a question, but is it basically like a way of executing one of our statutory?
Well, I think that's right, and that sort of is alluded to in the first sentence of the draft. I mean, I put in the alternative intro, but this is sort of our key, one of our 2 to 3 big things we are supposed to do. So to me, it's really important. And Stephen asked this question, and other people have too, so I don't want to call it Stephen, just about like, how much does the strategic plan stay static versus changing it? We just had that conversation here now. And I guess my question, this is part of the tension of this document allows us to add on to what's already happening in the strategic plan and put a little bit of our stamp on it without maybe completely trying to change the wording, as you alluded to, Linus, in the strategic plan, which has been worked on by many people. But I don't see this as overriding those other things. It's just meant to sort of give our moment in time feedback for the year, as opposed to us trying to change a multi-year document. I don't know. That's my thinking on it, Stephen. I don't know if that's helpful. And I don't know if other people have other thoughts.
That's helpful. Thanks, Maria.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah?
I feel like if we're going to get a group of people together and say that you're the stakeholders and you participate in the process, that we need to make sure that we honor the work that's done. And to take a right turn at this juncture feels to me like we're not honoring the authors, right? So there was a lot of language. Funny because for the way that this felt to me was that a lot of these proposed changes came in last minute. And I feel like the rug's being pulled out from underneath me because I had been very, I really liked the budget guidelines, the first draft as it was. And there's a lot in there that I feel like we've been working towards for a while. And that goes back to that group that did the strategic plan. So I'm hesitant to make large changes that we, those of us who aren't.
You're saying to the alternative, you're referring specifically to the alternative proposed wording.
The alternative proposed wordings in all the different things in front of me, I don't want to do too many changes because I felt like we've already come to some agreements.
So Mariah, what would be most helpful?
Okay, well, I'm going to go back to where I was going to go, which was
Right.
to talk about a couple of these things. And it's to get a sense of the committee. First one is the highlighted sentence, like, is the strategic plan, the strategic plan which the school committee has voted and endorsed, do we agree that, I think the question is, are we ceding our budget or responsibility for the budget by letting the strategic plan be the sort of anchor of the budget, as opposed to us having more of a hand in it? I personally feel comfortable, having endorsed the strategic plan myself, to let that be a source of continuity and decision-making for the district over the long term. So I feel comfortable with that, but I think it's something we should all talk about because it's a strong philosophical statement of the committee.
Can I weigh in on this?
Stephen, then Helen?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off, Helen?
Go ahead, Stephen, you got it first.
Okay, so the language, the alternative language, I think that I proposed, Mariah, you left out some of it, which is that. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
I proposed initial language above the bullets that state, and I'll read it.
Number 3?
No, prior to that, that the FY 26 to 30 budgets should first and foremost support the fulfillment of PSB's 2024 to 27 strategic plan and any subsequent strategic plans. So I propose that language to precede any subsequent bullets. And I thought that language was a strong commitment to supporting the strategic plan and was more precise than a general commitment to having it be the gravity of our decision-making independent of changes, which I thought can be interpreted to be a deferral of our executive authority to oversee budget-making decisions. I also looked at the budget guidelines for a number of neighboring communities, including Newton's, Wellesley's, Arlington's, and about 3 or 4 other ones. And those that had a strategic plan had it as a bullet or an objective rather than this central overriding commitment that overrode even changes to leadership and the school committee's composition. I think it goes too far to say that. I think it's sufficient to say that we support it as our first and foremost objective. And I think it's simply, we are not sufficiently taking our executive authority to oversee the budget seriously enough by saying that. That's my argument against that sentence.
Helen, did you want to? Nope, okay.
I mean, I can kill that whole paragraph too if we want to. Like, we more or less say the same thing below. It says the primary guideline for FY 26 to 30 is that all activities described in the strategic plan and future iterations thereof will have clearly identified funding in the budget, which I thought was the equivalent, Stephen, of your other sentence. You said, I want to have this primary priority, but it was more or less there. So I think I didn't understand that it wasn't exactly as written, but now I understand that. But I'm fine to delete the whole paragraph that has the highlighted, or like to massage it so that paragraph basically disappears.
I'm not opposed to having it be the central commitment of the budget guidelines. I just want to avoid having this commitment seem like anything more than a guideline. I don't think it should usurp any authority that the school committee possesses.
But how could this usurp any authority we have?
Because if it's saying that this is the gravity of budget making decisions, when budget oversight and approval rests with the school committee, I think it could be reasonably interpreted to mean that we should stick to any budget commitments in the strategic plan, even if the strategic plan is a living document and can be interpreted in a variety of ways. I think it's too broad a statement.
Sarah, did you want to speak?
Well, now I'm confused. So, can you just tell me that you wanted to take the highlighted part out? Okay, but the thing is that I can agree with all your
I
words
actually would
effectively.
propose taking, I think the most powerful budget guidelines that I found had a really brief introduction that expressed the strong vision of the school committee and then stated its priorities immediately. And that's why I was proposing an alternative introduction that did that, and then went straight into the objectives that we wanted to see enacted or that we wanted to give as guidelines to the administration. I recognize that's not how we've operated in the past, but that's what I came away with after reading other districts' budget guidelines. And I thought we could accomplish that by just stating our first objective is first and foremost to support the enactment of the strategic plan. And here are our other objectives that we would like to see.
I feel like I could agree with that if I hadn't then read the bullet points that are in green at the bottom as being yours as well. Because if you say what you've just said, and then really try to change the kind of way that I've interpreted this document with these new, more brief bullet points, then that's where I get uncomfortable. So for example, if there's things that we've been working towards for a while and had conversations about and really want to make sure that we see in our budget, and then suddenly we're not working toward those anymore because we have these very vague, fewer priorities and more vague ones, I feel like we're not going to be effective because we're undoing some of the work that we've done.
I guess it seemed to me that we should state the priorities in the strategic plan that we wanted to see prioritized above other areas of the strategic plan. So it was more powerful to state these as generalities and then leave the specificities for the strategic plan. So these three areas that are in black are already articulated in the strategic plan, as far as I can tell. So I thought by summarizing them as a priority and what
think
the
you mean
value of that
staffing.
priority was, it would be most powerful.
1, 2, 3 is what I think you mean.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, that's,
So I'm
Carolyn?
listening, thank you. I'm listening with interest to this conversation between two people who've gone through this process before. So, and generally speaking, my understanding of this process as it was explained to me is that this is a document that gets tweaked annually. And so, but specific to the conversation that the back and forth there between Sarah and Stephen. So Sarah, you're saying you feel, I think you're saying you feel committed to some of the things, specific things that were worked on last year. And so in these 1, 2, 3, can you give me like what specifics that are less vague than anything else?
It's really important to me the way that we talk about right-sized staffing for the Office of Educational Equity. That's something that has to do with the people that we're employing right now and the way that we're positioning ourselves to do the work. If we're not able to have that in our budget, I feel like some of the work that we've been working on will not go forward.
So the way I see that bullet is fund an educational equity strategy. And I don't know if an educational equity strategy has been specifically, like that sounds vague, to be honest. Like, I don't know what that is. And then the right size is sort of like follows when there are specifics. So, but I appreciate the answer. But so to me, like most of these sound pretty broad and that's not, yeah, so. I
Susan,
mean, we don't
can
know
I-
what the strategy is, I don't think.
Well, I think that one of the challenges I had with, one of the things I liked about what you were saying, Stephen, was make it shorter. Just make it shorter. I'm like, yeah, I'm on board with that. Let's just, like, philosophically, longer versus shorter, let's just cut out extra words. So I think I can take a big pass through and cut out extra words. And I think that your third bullet essentially is no different from the budget number 3. And I think that the first budget is a little bit different in that it doesn't just focus on the high school. So I'm getting into a little bit of like, yes, let's do shorter. You're talking about class sizes at all levels, and I think that's something for us to discuss as a committee. How do we talk about that? I think that your second bullet, to me, becomes too broad, because these are talking about, the 4 bullets here are very specific and very timelined, and yours becomes, there's no timelines here, and it's much broader in a way that I'm not sure if I would never, ever know if we achieved your second bullet. So that, to me, is a meaningful difference. Like, what you wrote in number 2 is so broad, whereas what we have, as we've outlined it, gives fiscal years, gives specific programs. These are specific things we've seen. So that, yes, I want to shorten things, and I appreciate what you're saying about that, but I don't want us to lose the specificity that allows us to know if the things we've asked to be done are being done. So,
I think your point.
yeah. So in general, just going back to these philosophical questions, I think we can cut out this paragraph or adjust it in some way to keep the sort of focus on the strategic plan without any possible misunderstanding of whether or not we are ceding our ultimate statutory obligation. I think in general, I can go through and shorten, and we can figure out what we do on that. I think that members, particularly Helen, Jesse, and Carolyn, had other specific topics to bring up. And I wonder if we might just want to, if you all just might want to throw those out there, the things that you'd like to see, so that we can have a sense of the committee. I don't want to like beat each one to death, but basically a sense of the committee. Are we sort of leaning in that direction? And then we could wordsmith those ones offline to bring it back to the committee. And I didn't get the chance, Jesse, to read your document other than like super quick skim. So maybe, I guess I leave it to the 3 of you. Maybe Helen, you want to start, since yours was relatively brief, to.
I did say I would like world language K through 5 returned.
Is that what you said? I don't remember what.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
K through 5.
Okay.
But I wanted to be brought back in a stronger and using the report that we got and looking for ways to do that. And it can't happen next year, but we could at least start the plan for, maybe that would be what you would want to put for a return of K5 world language. And I don't remember if they suggested if we were eliminating it, bringing it back year by year, or bringing it back, in kindergarten and moving our way up with a cohort. I don't remember.
I think that Dr. Guillory and Dr. Fortuna have a year in mind. What year was that? Can you remind me? It's in 2 years, correct?
I thought it was 2 to 3, but because
3 years?
we talked about it in the context of potentially adding to the school day, as well as adding to the length of the school day. Let me be specific.
Yeah.
And what's the cost implication there as well? So it's teeing all of those pieces up.
And can you remind me if that was 27?
Jody, do you remember offhand?
Is she here still?
Yes, she's
It
still
was
out.
27.
27, okay.
So planning for it in this coming year would make sense. because-
Starting the planning of it,
Yeah,
yeah.
the planning, so that it could be implemented or partially implemented in '27.
Should we write something like by FY '28? And I only say that just because that gives a little bit of wiggle room, because I think this is a much.
Don't hit the goal,
No, of course,
then we
course.
move it on.
Yeah, it's just
you
a
know.
guideline.
I would
Yeah,
rather-
exactly. But I think it's also tied into the question of the longer school day. It just feels like there's,
Well, that would be an override.
well, that's my point of, should we be talking about this as, there's a year for planning, a year for figuring out the money, and then the implementation. I think there's just so many moving parts here.
And
I see Jody's hand is up too.
and the reality of our CBA negotiations that are also going to be happening starting next fall,
Yeah, it
So
feels,
that would be FY '26.
FY
yeah,
26.
427, right?
Yeah.
Jody?
Jody, yeah.
I'm concerned about capacity in being able to do it well next year with the launch of a new literacy initiative.
Good point.
And I'm also, not that this is not a reason to do it, but I'm concerned about staffing. We're having a difficult time staffing our middle school programs now with qualified candidates, and I'm worried about being able to staff by a certain date. So those are my key concerns with that bullet.
Well, why don't we put a pin in world language for now? We'll come back and talk to you offline, Jody, and sort of figure out some of these things to come back to the group with some wording that might work for everyone in a timeline. But
Thank you.
knowing that world language is in the ether.
I'd like to be a part of that conversation, if that works.
Yeah. Carolyn and Jesse, does one of you want to share some of your topics that you'd like to see?
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, sure.
Where is it that we can read it while you're saying it?
There was a table one that was from Jesse, and then there's one that says staffing
Right.
enrollment at the top that's from Carolyn.
Okay.
Right, so in the frantic rush to respond to
Sorry.
the email that
There
came
was a
out-
miscommunication, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
yes, that's okay, that's okay. There was still a frantic rush to put something together that seemed to look like guidelines without being specific milestones, let's say. So I took the track in the table of pulling together 5 guidelines with some language, and then tried to map them to the original language that I saw in this other, in the first reading document. So the first one talks to, and they're at high level because I think I wasn't sure the guidelines needed to be specific budgeted items as we've been talking in the last few minutes, though. So aligning the budget with educational goals, and again, does it reflect our school priorities and the goals from the SIPs that we heard about, and supporting the broader mission like the strategic goals that measured on a regular basis. For me, that says what the original language said as well, but gives us some broader perspective and keeps our feet to the fire in making sure that each thing that's put into the budget aligns with a goal. And so if those goals are from the strategic goals, then it's a perfect match. The second one had to do with equity and inclusion as a priority, and comes back to basically making sure in everything that we do that all students have access to quality education. And so that's throughout the whole year, because I read a lot of stuff about extended school year and summer course opportunities. Of course, that's throughout the year. And then the achievement gaps and support for students that might be challenged with special needs or low income or foreign language would be included in there. That's the inclusion piece. And again, I'm going to repeat almost for each one that we need special ways of maintaining dashboards or measurements. And I saw that in the original proposed letter as well. And
Yeah,
again,
we should come back to that. I just wanna-
yes,
yep.
sure. The third was fiscal responsibility, so make sure it's a balanced budget. And that also includes the reserve fund that I saw mentioned in 1 or 2 places. But there was nothing about the topic, let's call it, of fiscal responsibility by the school committee in how we're going to develop and how the school department's going to develop the budget that was not in the original guidelines, is engaging other stakeholders in the process across the community. There are a lot. I mean, I know I met during the campaign from house party to house party or group to group. Individuals that came up to me and said, I retired from running a $30 million or $500 million corporation, or I was a CFO of 5 companies. All these things. There are people I wrote down their addresses as they approached me from different neighborhoods, because they have like a wealth of data, and they said, well, no one ever asks me anything. I just sort of read stuff in the newspaper, and I realized how did that get done? I'd love to help. So engaging stakeholders, even from the community, in the process to make sure it addresses all the needs. And it certainly would help to promote a sense that we're being as transparent as possible in how we're doing it. There was nothing about sort of the widest.
Do you see that as a school committee responsibility, or is this a directive to staff? Because this document is a directive, so that's why I want to, that's why I'm
Yeah,
just
they
sort of.
should, they'd want to, yeah, we'd want them to. Yeah, we'd want staff to do that, to bring other people in, just as well as, I mean, you know, if, it'd be the difference even me saying that we go out and pay a consultant who's really good at helping schools with developing budgets, while we have people, I won't say wandering around Brookline, there are people like that.
Well, I think that
People-
running a company is incredibly different from municipal finance. Like, they're just not the same
But we
thing.
can find people who did NGOs, people who ran nonprofits, all kinds of, there are lots
For
of
sure.
people out there.
For sure.
And the last one was this, you just mentioned it a moment ago, but about measurements, monitor and evaluate the spending on a regular basis. That was also not in the original guidelines, so at least the ones that I read. And I felt that there's something about being able to make regular adjustments to the spending to make sure we don't get bitten at the end.
That part we do through the finance subcommittee. So we have quarterly meetings.
sure.
Yeah.
Great.
Given what you wrote here, are there specific, like, if we don't rewrite things, but the way you did rewrite them, I guess my question is, if we weren't going to rewrite them, but edit the wording that was here, are there things that you would suggest editing particularly?
Well, you mean in the three that are listed in the original letter?
Yeah, and I guess for example, one of the things that I liked in the way you wrote it is I think you talked about SIPs a little bit differently than the way they're written here. Because one of the things that I thought was very interesting and illuminating in our SIP conversation last week was that we're still in a transition phase from the old way of budgeting to the new way of budgeting, and it was clear that we're halfway through it, and that was clear. And so how the SIPs are, and even how the school budgets are looked at as holistically, as opposed to an SIP has $10,000 to support it, and that's like the story, which isn't, right? So we're in a transition phase. So how that, and I think your language speaks to that a little bit better than what's written here. So personally, I find that to be appealing to how we think about that transition from old process to new process. I would like to incorporate some of that, if that's okay with you. If, I don't know how the committee members feel, but to me, that was something that I thought maybe we could be a little more eloquent and supportive of the work that the principals are doing and finance is doing, just in the wording a little bit. Keeping it short, very short, but.
But I think with that, and again, because this is what Jesse has here is sort of the way, when I was a building principal, the way we would write our school improvement plan with that. But what you just said there, Mariah, sort of this transition piece, is that right now we are not set up in such a way to give the funds or the resources that are needed to impact or drive some of that change, and some of our internal systems are not there as of yet. And so, you know, when I hear dashboards, I get excited, but at the same time, it gives me agita. Because right now, we're still very much a manual system where we have people keying information in. And so so what I'm thinking about in the background is what are the infrastructural requirements that automate much of this so that we can move our staff away from doing the manual keyboarding aspects or data entry, and actually allow them to analyze and really dig in and get creative and excited with their work. So that's a tension I just want to name as part of this. So I like the direction of the thinking, but I also want to name that as a concern for the work also.
Let's come back to dashboards in a minute. Jesse, are you ready for, is there other things in your stuff that you want to call out for now? Okay. Carolyn, do you want to go through your recommendations for us? And then I want us to come back to the dashboards conversation. Okay.
Either way.
No, go ahead. You're next.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Great. Sorry. I
The way is you.
So again, my understanding of the directive here was like, this is sort of, by the way, I like how it opens. Like, I like how it starts with the school committee is responsible for approving and overseeing the district annual budget, educational plan, up. I like the mention of the, having the strategic plan as the center. And then my understanding of this was, it's basically the school committee saying, here's sort of like the what we would like to see a budget come to us to say, here's what we want to spend money on. Here's how we want to do these things. So this was just kind of my go at it. Something about class size, which basically reflects what I think. I think it's important that we invest in classroom instruction and student-facing educators, however that's expressed. For me, that's a value. I put hold reserve funds for staff because I think, was that noted as something that used to be?
No,
or
it's still
come
there.
up somewhere else?
It's still in 3B.
Okay.
Yeah, it was there last year.
No,
Yeah.
she was.
It
trying-
was
We
there,
used
it
to
got
have
removed,
that
and now it's
system
back.
So that we had a few extra positions.
Yep.
If a class size grew, we
Yeah,
could
yeah,
immediately. do
yeah.
that.
So, I certainly would defer to Susan and others who can, and Jody, who can speak to the kind of on-the-ground need for that. But given that I'm committed to investing in classroom instruction, if staff have found that they miss that, I'd be interested in hearing that and seeing it go back, if that was a recommendation.
Wait, what go back? I missed.
Having a reserve fund
Oh,
for
we're
staff.
already doing it. We're partway through the process. That's what 3B is.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Then that wasn't clear to me. When I say invest in literacy program rollout, I'm just sort of saying support it to the extent needed and recommended by staff. And then, so I'm going to jump down to the summer programming. Basically, like, I support and would support expansion of that as a way to support students who need more support, need more challenge. I just think it would be great to offer something really robust in terms of summer. I'm not going to get into the whole high school electives, learning center, but that's, I think, sort of like a percolating challenge that it would be great to kind of address. I would love to see us do more in the sort of calculus project model. So that's where I'm going with talking about high dosage tutoring. That might not be the right word, but again, just focusing on teaching, giving more to students who need more. I would love for us to have more investment in middle school programming. I think that in districts that have standalone middle schools, there's just so much more, and that really supports student engagement. If there are clubs, if there's sports, and I know it costs money, but I'm putting it in there.
What are you taking out?
Bring it and we'll respond. I don't know a lot about this conversation about lengthening the school day, so that's why it has question marks around it, but it sounds like that's, I guess that's a TBD. And then the stuff I wrote under budget, I don't know if it's appropriate for this document. I don't really know. I didn't fully understand, I guess,
There'll be a different document, Carolyn, that picks through sort of what does the budget book look like. So I would park those ones for now until we, not necessarily transportation plans, but these other sort of like trends and overarching things, those will go into the budget book, and we'll come to that conversation
in a month.
As far as like how much transparency there's going to be. So then
Not about how much transparency, but the types of analyses, meta-analyses that we're asking for. So,
okay.
yeah, dollars per student or percentage of staff who are student-facing versus non-student-facing, all of that will be in the budget book, and that will be a separate conversation.
I guess, so then how come, if this is a budget guideline, what does, like, how come there's a number 3, budget?
Because those are actually like the budget things, not the budget presentation, but how they actually get included, like the fact that SIPs are part of the budget itself, the fact that we're
Okay.
telling them to fund things that are, they're about the budget, not about the presentation of the.
So they're sort of broad.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are you talking about with transportation plans and costs? I'm not clear.
Let me see.
The last one.
Yeah. Oh, I was just thinking about how transportation, the out-of-district transportation ended up being such a pain point this year. And I don't know how efficient our in-district transportation is either. So I guess I just want to make sure that the changes that Susan implemented this year are working, and maybe it's not a budget guideline, but it's sort of we're spending so much money that we have to spend on transportation.
I think it's more of a question to ask at finance.
Okay.
To have a
I think that's an
report on that.
oversight kind
Yeah,
of a question
yeah.
rather than a budget construction
Yeah.
question,
Okay,
I guess. Yeah.
fine.
Yep.
Andy, do you have your hand up? And then Stephen?
Where's he?
Did you say Andy had his hand up?
Someone said Andy had his hand up.
Yes, I did for a while, but then I took it down because it was addressed. But I guess something that came up earlier that I am wondering about. So I think when Helen mentioned world language, and then the discussion turned to lengthening the school day, possible need for an override, and I agree that that makes that item like not suitable to be included in a document like this one. I am wondering, how do we talk about those things? Something that is on a five-year horizon. That may never happen, but if it ever is going to happen, we need to intentionally begin to study now what resources would be needed, what else might have to go away, something like lengthening the school day that involves renegotiating contracts and raising a lot of money that we don't yet have. We have to start planning for that intentionally. Do we write it down somewhere? Does that go somewhere in the introduction to the budget book, or where do we memorialize our interest in that issue?
So this was going to be one of my closing questions to people. I think it does need to go in here, and because I think this is 5 years out, and we need to I do think it needs to be in here because this is something that everyone's going to have to start reorienting themselves toward. I don't know. We don't know what. We don't know how. That's why it's not for next year, but it's going to have to be on the horizon, and I think this is the right place for it.
And we have to be careful to
Lengthening.
write it in a way that doesn't suggest that it's a foregone conclusion that anything of the sort would happen, right? But that there's interest in it, and we need to start doing feasibility on it.
I thought that, Linus, when you came to us last spring, you said that the state had visited and there was, I don't know if it's a foregone conclusion, but I thought it was a expected outcome. Maybe I misunderstood that the state will be expecting us to do this, to take on this work.
So in looking at, and Lisa and Jody just submitted our TFM, our tiered focus and monitoring results back about the length of the school day. And because we're at the K-8 level, we were able to demonstrate through our scheduling meeting the required number of minutes. The challenge with this is that to then put in a robust K-5 world language, as Helen is describing, with dedicated time, that means either we're going to do less of something else, that means taking something else off the plate, or if we want to add this in addition to, that means lengthening the school day as such. And so at the time, we were really looking through our schedules to make sure that we could take care of our academic core. We've been able to meet that requirement as such, so adding back something more stringent than what we had initially means that either something comes off or something gets added as such.
But don't we now not meet national best practices, for example, for meal and break times as well? So I'm just saying, like, it's not just about, I'm not gonna,
Right.
I don't think you're saying this, but it's not about we can only have world language if we linked into the school day. I think there's like
Other
a
things,
series of things
absolutely.
that would be really appropriate in a school day that we should have, so.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that that's the case K through 5 and not just K through 3.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, another issue that maybe requires feasibility that's on the horizon and that we don't yet have the resources for is universal pre-K, right? Or at least greatly expanded pre-K. That's sort of predictably on the horizon. We need to start doing feasibility on it, but we can't yet budget for it, obviously, right? But we probably should memorialize that somewhere. And Mariah, you're saying maybe here, just as like, a statement of interest.
Is it a 5-year statement? And are we having to carry this ourselves, or is that going to come with a huge federal?
Well, we could put it in terms of
Injection of
if the
funds.
state, as soon
Yeah.
as the state funds.
Yep.
Or state or federal government.
Okay, I'm writing that down.
Yeah, I would like that.
Okay.
Stephen's next. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stephen, then Helen.
Thanks. So 3 quick things. One, just to respond to what Andy said, one way that Wellesley addressed what you brought up, Andy, is they mentioned that they were going to fund ongoing analyses in like Cropper McGibbon or other projection analyses for the district in full so that they can continue to project the needs of the district. We could consider something like that in our budget guidelines, that we want to make a commitment to continue funding analyses of the district's projected needs, including demographic changes, state regulatory or funding changes, etc. Just a thought on how to broaden Andy's suggestion to something that might be a broader
You said
guideline.
state and federal, what was the word you used?
Something not as good as what you're going to come up with afterwards.
Okay, we'll rewind the tape later on and figure out what it was. It was good.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's thought number 1. Thought number 2 is that I wholeheartedly and unsurprisingly want to endorse Carolyn's proposal to elevate to the level of a guideline that support for the literacy curriculum and PD rollout, not hopefully not just because I have it as my own policy preference, but because it's such a major and one-time investment for PSB that I think it deserves to be at the level of a budget guideline that we want to fully support its rollout. Along the same lines, I really liked Jesse's articulation of support for the SIP process, because I thought, like I think most of you, that the SIP presentations have just been increasingly strong, and I like the idea of elevating SIPs into a budget book guideline by saying by giving it some guideline along those lines, by saying that priority should be where possible given to the stronger support of SIPs in this and future budgets. The third comment is that beyond those 2 suggestions, I guess I want to reiterate wanting to broaden out the educational equity budget guideline to something more vague, so that the specificity of
Vague.
how we, what was that?
Linus didn't hear what the word was. He said what? I said vague.
Oh,
Yeah.
something broader and less specific, aka vague, so that the meat of what we do in educational equity is left to the strategic plan and negotiated more fully with the Office of Educational Equity in the DEIJ subcommittee meetings and in the school committee meetings. Because I think it's clear from Mariah's proposed language, Jesse's proposed language, and Carolyn's proposed language that the policy preferences of different school committee members will differ. And I think finding a consensus on this might be difficult. So I would like to propose continuing to make funding educational equity a priority, but leaving the specifics of what that entails to different negotiating channels. So those are my 3 suggestions. Thanks.
How is that last one different than what's written here? What would you change in 2C?
From yours, Jesse's or Carolyn's?
Mine. How would you change 2C? What there is too specific and do you think needs to be vaguer?
Sorry, I just closed your document.
Bad
Can I
timing.
get back to you as soon as I open it up?
Yeah. Can I ask a couple more questions and we come back? And this
Yeah.
is responding to something that Carolyn said. Carolyn brought up enrichment, and I'm wondering what the committee thinks about rolling enrichment into 2D, such that the summer programming is not just about, the examples given are not just about students on IEP accessing summer electives, but also to be able to incorporate enrichment into the summer programming.
And sorry, Helen, I'm going to jump super quick. That, if it wasn't clear, I think that was sort of what I intended. Okay.
I think that's what you were intending. You mentioned it broadly, not related to that one. I'm saying, but also does that scratch the itch? Does that does that address the concern that people want to have enrichment? Is addressing it as summer program at the high school a good start or insufficient, or, because it doesn't address it at K through 8? Yeah.
Is this like a wish list of
Yeah.
all the stuff
Oh,
we want?
thank you. Thank you, 'cause-
I mean, I'm not understanding where all this
I
is
think
coming
that
from.
the summer programming is something that we've talked about for a
No,
long
I'm
time.
not saying I'm against it. I'm
Yeah.
just saying the whole conversation is, possible longer day, bringing world language back, enrichment, they're all great.
Yeah.
But we're still with the same pocket of money. So in my mind, the guidelines are to help us decide if and when we don't have enough money, how do we vote for priorities? And so, I mean, that's fine.
So do we want to say we don't want robust summer programming?
No, I'm not saying that. I just don't know if that's a guideline for the budget.
Well, see, I think it's important. And last year when we talked about it, we thought it was important too.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just trying to make this a really useful tool for us.
So
Yeah, I
have a
agree
long
with
list.
Suzanne on that.
We have a
I think
long
it would
list
mean
of
that we want to
wants.
prioritize that first above other activities, and I don't know that there's consensus on that, or I'm not sure that I would be supportive of that as the first in my wish list.
So I'd
Summer
like to just-
programming.
I'd like to just say one other
Right.
thing about budgeting. When we talk about SIPs and budgeting at the school level, $10,000 will do nothing.
Right.
I mean, it buys crayons. It will do nothing for new programs or new initiatives or new ways of thinking. And what really needs to happen, I think, is that they are going to get the same budget as we give them a budget based on the programs, the number of students, and then they meaning the local school level, has to decide how those monies will be spent. So maybe they'll say, I'm going to trade in 3 paras for a classroom teacher, or I'm going to trade in a classroom teacher for 3 paras, or I'm going to share
errors.
paras, or I'm going to share a science teacher because I really only need 1.5. And right now what happens, is my understanding, is that all comes from up above. The
I don't know if
coordinators.
totally that, but yeah.
But for the most part, they're told how many science teachers, world language teachers, paras, they're told what they're going to have. And if we really want the budget to happen at the school level, they need to be able to figure out what the needs are of the school. The school site council may even have some people that understand budgets on it. That's where they should come in, not at the Dr. Givens level, in my mind. I mean, she's professional, that's her job. But at the local level, it might be helpful to have somebody who really kind of can play with budgets a little bit. And then that's where that happens. And so somehow we're still just talking about everything we want, but we're not giving them any money except for $10,000, which.
Well, we know that that's going to change.
Okay, so I
That's,
just-
we've
I
accepted,
just-
we all know 10,000, the old model is not, is the old
Exactly.
model,
And
right?
so at some point, we need to have the conversation about what this new model will look like. If we want to go there, if we want to just stay with the, you do who you get and we give it to you, then we can do that. But we have a number of years talked about having more decisions made at the school level. And so.
But can I, before you, hold on, Helen, before you, how does that, like, was that prompted by the addition of enrichment into summer programming?
No, it's prompted by this whole conversation.
Okay.
This whole conversation. I mean, I think if a school says, by golly, we want to do enrichment, I am committed to it, then they have to figure out, with the help of central office, how that can happen within their budget.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, Suzanne, yes, they have to do it, but also this is our budget and something that we're supposed to be supporting. And I think that there is a huge community desire to see this kind of programming. So to the extent we are also providing feedback to building leaders about what we're hearing, I think that that's important too.
That's true, but again, if you don't give them the money, they can't do anything different.
Well, absolutely. That's why it says fund it. Like the first word there's fund.
I know, but, okay, we don't have the funding for them, so we have to help them.
Decisions need to be made. I mean, that's the whole point of this, right? Is that trade-offs have to be made. And if we don't,
Yeah, but the question.
What if we can't? What if there?
we went
aren't-
through that exercise last year.
Yeah.
And the school committee made decisions.
And some of us weren't very happy with some of that.
All of us are not always going to
But
be
we've
happy.
already made those are gone.
Right.
You know, the next level gets harder. I think, I'd like to say two things, if I may. One, it's very interesting. Part of the reason that things weren't so school-controlled was because in the past, they were. And there was no equity among the schools in terms of what you would get at one school and what you would get at another school. So that was the shift then towards, making it so that everybody got a per pupil allotment, whatever it was. And one school didn't have a drama teacher and another school had a special art program. It sort of got leveled out. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But this sounds like it's a movement back to that, because there's certain basics they have to fund. We have to have kids in classrooms, and they have to learn a certain amount of curriculum,
Wait, what about these guidelines as a shift backwards? I'm confused by that.
to giving more control, local control, so to speak,
But
of
that's,
schools.
that's not us. That's like the 1994 ed reform.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
okay.
we were there, we left, we came back, because people were saying, why do they have that and we don't have that? Anyway, the other piece, I think, this robust summer.
But Helen, if I could, just
Yeah,
on
sure.
that, but I think that's the tension that we expect to see with the local control with school site council. And so that's part of what Suzanne is saying here as well. It's just we're gonna, some may experience it as an inequity, but the local school may say, this is my customization for what I need for my particular body of students. And that looks different from school to school. There are some things that are going to be consistent. We need everybody in math. We need everybody in science. We need everybody in social studies and ELA. That becomes a given. But then when you start saying, well, I want this program, and so on this side of town, I have this program, but on this side of town, I have that. And then you have now people looking over the fence saying, oh, well, I want that. And
Why would this process lead to that problem that you're describing? My understanding of this document and process is the school committee saying, these are our collective values. This is where we want to see the district prioritize its spending. So at least for me, when I looked at this, I definitely wasn't thinking about it as like individual.
No, I'm not saying about this
Okay.
document. I was just responding
Okay.
to what Helen was saying about the centralized control versus local control, not about this document.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
And, yeah, so, and I would, not to get too off track, I would certainly make the argument that enrichment is educational equity, right? If equity is ensuring that every student gets what they need to meet their academic and social potential, then enrichment is educational equity.
Okay, so,
Can I just,
okay, okay.
yeah, there was one
Because then
other
we're going to
piece.
try and tie it
Because
together,
I think
Mariah.
We're almost done. I had one more question
Okay.
and then,
2D
yeah, we're
could
close.
be a budget buster if we make it universal.
2D.
Yep. You're having robust summer programming. And I don't know how you go about doing that. I do think 2A is really important, our extended school year for those kids who need it. I think that's critical. I don't mind expanding that, but I think 2D can become, depending on how it's done, I mean, we could offer it, but then it would be, only kids, who could pay, or we'd have, as we have now, our summer school that's in deficit. So that's my point.
Okay, Mariah, how are we
Okay,
wrapping this up?
One more question for the group, and you're not allowed to talk about it as long as you did everything else, and then one discussion on dashboards. Several members brought up class sizes beyond the high school. 1A right now only contemplates class sizes at the high school. Do we want to consider a broader, given the discussions we've had in this past year, is there something we want to say about class sizes? Stephen suggested some wording. I think maybe Carolyn did too. Or do we keep it focused on the high school and then continuing to look at the K-12 enrollment forecast as is articulated here?
Aren't we still committed to the guidelines from the K to 8, pre-K to 8?
I'm just asking.
Oh, I would
Okay,
say
does
that.
anyone want wording changed here? If we're okay with it, that's fine. I just want to get a
No,
sense of the.
I would actually like to have a commitment to the class size guidelines, K to 8,
Which one, which guidelines?
our guidelines.
The ones that don't actually exist in any policy
Yeah.
that we've tried to get, okay. I'll write down something about class size guidelines. And then lastly, I just want to bring us back to the paragraph right before number 1, which talks about the dashboards. And there is a guideline hidden in there. Funding must be included for the development of these or equivalent data analytics tools in FY26 if they are not complete by the end of calendar year 2024, which is the end of Q2 for fiscal year 2025. So I don't know where we're at on that, Linus, and you were just alluding to it as well. But to me, it's like, this is the heart of it.
Well, certainly with some of our student metrics, we're building out dashboards there. And I know Susan and her team has done some work on those as well, so I'll let her weigh in on that when she returns.
Okay. So I'll come back to you on that one for some refined wording over the next week. Yep, I can move that one down to budget. Good idea. Great. Thank you. That's the end. Unless anyone else has something to say, going once, going twice, done. Sure. Thanks, everyone, for the
Yeah,
input.
thank you, Maria, and everybody who contributed and everybody today. Okay, we're moving along. We're going to do our subcommittees and liaison reports. Again, fairly brief if you can. Capital, you're up first.
Okay, I'll be brief. Tomorrow is the Pierce School Building Committee meeting at 4 o'clock on Zoom. And we will probably be discussing, I imagine, the crossing guards at that point, and what's happening, what the school's been able to do, what we're looking at. I need to talk to Susan. I know her and Joe have been trying to figure things out, too. On Friday morning is the Driscoll School Building Committee meeting at 8 o'clock. The Capital Subcommittee meeting will be on October 24th at 4 o'clock, which it'll include our CIP requests for next year. I know it's been delayed, but that was because Charlie was out on sick leave, Charlie Simmons, the head of buildings, and we wanted to make sure that we're working together on that request. He's back. I just saw him this evening in the garage. So he's definitely back and working and looks great.
Do we have to do a possible vote on support letter for the Davis Path?
Yes, so you saw in your packet, I guess that's all for those pieces, unless anybody has any questions. The discussion and possible vote to issue a support letter. So the school committee actually issued a support letter last year on this Davis Path footbridge, which is an important grant that DPW is trying to get. At the time, they said they didn't know if they were going to get it. I was sort of hoping they didn't get it last year, so the timing would work out, that we would be able to use the field for Pierce School throughout the time that we're at Old Lincoln School, and that by the time we leave it, they would be working on that path and the playground, because the two will be going together. I spoke with Erin Shute-Galantine, Commissioner of Department of Public Works, and she felt that that's probably the trajectory of what would happen if we were to get it. But if we don't apply for it, we're not even going to get it. So I would recommend that we approve resending a letter. I don't know exactly what she wants us to do. A new letter dated this year with the new signature, and maybe give me the permission, or
Is it
Andy
substantially the
permission
same as
to
last
sign.
year's? Okay.
Yeah.
So do we need to
Yes.
vote?
Yes, I would like to, I'll make a motion to vote to issue a support letter for DPW's Davis Path Footbridge Replacement Project for the
Seconded.
federal grant application. Yes.
Jesse, thanks. You seconded. Jesse,
I seconded it.
Oh,
Seconded.
okay, I thought,
okay, Jesse, your vote?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
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 Sarah?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Is that it?
So is there, do we need somebody to sign this letter?
I have Andy's signature, we're trying to put it, and I'll be getting it to Bill tomorrow.
Perfect.
Their grant application's due on Friday.
Right, okay, perfect. Thank you all.
Thank you. That was quick.
That was quick.
Curriculum met, actually, twice now we've met. So in August, end of August, we met. We were told a lot about the Unbounded Institute that a number of people went to from OTL. They loved it. They talked a lot about literacy, and they started including more around comprehension and around writing, which is, I think, good to see. So pre-K, K, and 1 are all going to be doing Hegarty and foundations. Grades 2 and 3 are doing foundations this fall. So that's across the board, everybody's doing it. As we mentioned, I think maybe Dr. Guillory mentioned, the after-school, some of them are calling them PLCs, but it's the after-school professional development. They had the first one several Tuesdays ago, and they were well-attended. So, and they talked about literacy and curriculum. So that's really good, and they do that 38 hours throughout the year, so they'll do it throughout the year. We've also been attending, I think Michelle did this, Literacy Academy by DESE, and it's going to help us with modules and on-the-ground coaching, so that's great. Yeah. And questions coming up is how do we understand dashboard data? We're going to spend some time doing that in the future. And then Jody did mention, as she mentioned, I think today, that there's some internalizing reorganization, and she's going to be out in the field more. So she's going to be out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Gabe is coming in more. He's doing more grants and mentoring and operations. And then Michelle's going to do more around literacy, really focused on literacy. So that was that meeting, and then we had the joint meeting with finance, and it was just a marathon, and we went through the school improvement plans. But, I felt like we were in a groove, and so we knew what was coming, and kudos to Jody and her team for really getting this format that worked. Everybody was the same, so we knew what to expect. We kind of knew where they were going and where they got off target there. They started off with celebrations and acknowledgments of teachers, staff, community people who were involved with the SIPs in their schools, and then they went through their goals, which matched the strategic plan goals for the district. So I thought that was really worthwhile. Yeah, it was excellent. And that's my report. DEIJ, okay, that's fine. Finance?
Nothing other than the meeting you just described. Thank you.
Yeah. Government relations, Andy?
Yes, government relations met very briefly last week to look at the warrant for the November town meeting and decide whether there were any warrant articles that we wanted to bring before the school committee so that the committee could discuss whether to hold a public hearing on those warrant articles. So if we do hold a public hearing on a warrant article, we invite the petitioner to come. They'll give a presentation. Anybody else who wants to speak can speak on it. And then after that, we may or may not hold a vote on whether to take on what position, if any, to take on the warrant article. If we do take a position, then somebody writes a statement and that goes into combined reports. So the two warrant articles that seem potentially of interest to the school committee or relevant to the operation of the schools are number 16, which is on tree removal. So on this one, at the time of the meeting, my reading of the warrant article explanation made me think that it wouldn't apply to school property at all. So this is a warrant article that strengthens the one that was passed in 2022 that makes it harder to chop down trees. And this one would extend sort of the application of it. According to the explanation, the current bylaw applies only to residential property, and the proposed new version would apply to all private property. And I thought at the time that that meant that schools would be exempt. However, just to be sure, I got in touch with Richard Murphy, who's one of the petitioners, and he said that it would apply to schools because schools are zoned as residential property. And so that's where it is for now. I think if it's going to be an issue for school property, then it might be something that we would at least want to inform ourselves about what the implications would be for for our properties. So
Andy, can I ask a question?
yeah.
Have you consulted with town council?
I haven't because we just had the meeting last week, and then I emailed Richard, and it's just in the last couple of days that I heard back from him about this, which is, I have to say, it's a surprise to me. I think that so does anybody remember when Mr. Murphy came before the school committee actually a couple of years ago when the original warrant article went through? And I think that at the time it was said to not apply to schools. And so I'm not sure now why we're being told that residential property does include our properties.
I think it would be helpful before we made a decision if you could confirm whether the language not as written in the explanation, but as in the proposed bylaw would include the schools as town council interprets it.
One thing, if I could just add to that, in the schools where we have taken down trees, we have replaced them probably with more, maybe double the amount that were there, but not the same size. And, one of the things that I read in that is they want larger caliper sized trees, and actually smaller ones grow faster than bigger ones and take better. So I don't know.
I guess the only issue we have to address right now is, so as Mariah suggests, I think I will go to town council. So if town council says no, it would not apply to schools, then I think we're done. If he says that it would apply to schools, would the committee then want to hold a public hearing, if only for the purpose of checking in with the petitioners about how they're interpreting this?
I think you're right.
Or do you think that's overkill?
Well, I think if the purpose of the discussion is for us to also issue our feelings on it, then that's probably valuable.
Okay.
If we have opinions on it, if it applies to us.
Okay. Can I take that as an instruction to go to town council? And if he says it does apply to us, then we would go ahead and schedule the public hearing.
Am I supposed to say yes? I don't know.
Or, from here, it's very hard for me to tell what people are.
Yes. Yeah, people are not.
It seems, people are okay with it.
Okay, good. So the other warrant article that the school committee might be interested in is 19 on that's a resolution calling on the select board to establish a Jewish American Heritage Month in May. The reason it's relevant to schools is that one of the parts of that is that let me read it out. The public schools of Brookline should observe Jewish American Heritage Month by organizing activities in celebration of the month and providing instruction on the history and culture of the Jewish American community. Right, so this would be a non-binding resolution. However, it is a warrant article that sort of is telling PSB what to teach when, and so it's something that we might wish to take up.
But town meeting can't bind PSB anyway, right?
Right. It would not be binding. However, it would be, it would be town meeting speaking on and sort of telling PSB what it would like to see happen in our schools.
And the wording you're pointing to is not provided to us, right? Because
Right,
we're
it's not
giving
in this one,
explanations, not
in
the, okay.
Yes, it's in the actual warrant
different
article, not the explanations. Yeah.
Well, I would also add that it was celebrated last year in the schools. This is just another, I mean, it was, we have pictures of it being done at FRR, for example, with nice posters, et cetera. It was also done at Hayes, although some additional direction would have been helpful there. And I met with parents and some others about trying to work with the district in terms of finding a way of doing it in a more standardized, shared way so that everybody is on the same page. I think the issue here with Article 19, Andy, is that they wanted the town to sort of revalidate what the federal government's already done, and that's it. It's a response to some historical other resolutions that were done for other faith communities in Brookline. And Michael and Scott were interested in doing this for an existing federal Heritage Month that's already celebrated by the schools, but to have the town officially recognize it in a resolution. That was it.
Yeah. So again, please speak up because I can't see people's gestures, but would the committee want to hold a hearing, invite petitioners, and possibly make a statement on this for combined reports, or do we feel comfortable staying out of it?
I would stay out of it personally. I mean, my vote.
Stay out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had discussion. I'm not sure why the warrant article is even being brought, actually, so that's.
Okay.
And
Anybody else?
it'll get passed. I mean, it will get passed. I'm not worried about that, but it's just another one of these, Brookline sort of getting in the way of what federal and state's already doing. And in this case, public schools of Brookline are already doing it. So it's not, it doesn't really affect the schools as much. It would if the town decided after this, without the resolution, not to celebrate it. Then it could affect the schools because you'd be going against like a town value, but it's the other way around. So I don't see this as an issue at all.
Does it make sense for the school committee to essentially say, just as like a point of record, PSB is already celebrating this?
Yeah.
Right, like we have a hearing just so that someone writes a thing that gets submitted and says this is something that's already a PSB value that is being practiced.
Sure.
I don't know.
The only, but you're saying having a hearing where the petitioners come.
I mean,
It's just like a lot for the petition, when you're doing a warrant article, it's a
Right.
lot of.
well, I don't know that we have to
bringing
have
your
the
show
full
on the
hearing,
road.
but we could submit
Okay.
something without doing a
Okay.
hearing, like submit a statement.
A statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we support it, and Public Schools of Brookline is 100% behind it, already being
Can we
done.
do that? Can we do a statement without a hearing? I'm just asking.
Oh, sure. And,
Oh, okay.
subject to vote in the committee, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, and probably it's a courtesy to offer the petitioners the hearing and then they can turn it down, right? Rather
Sure,
than tell
you're
them they're
right.
not allowed to come to.
You're right. I'm thinking about like sitting through all the hearings on advisory.
Yes, sure.
And remembering my friend Nathan, who was doing the bee thing, and he just could not, for his wife, who wanted to keep bees. And it just turned into like a nightmare of going to every possible group. And then, sorry, I'm just going to super quick, Andy, I would respectfully suggest you might, on the tree thing, actually check with Kara Bruton, might be more expert on the zoning questions, or an additional expert.
Well,
Okay, yeah.
you might know the answer to this. Are all public schools in Brookline considered to be on town property?
So there, it's complicated.
Okay, all right.
The two schools use parks that are public town parks. as our school park.
No, I'm asking, are the,
Land are they on?
I believe they are.
Well, no, but we own them. We own them. Yes, the town,
Look in the register of deeds, I'm pretty sure it says like their town of Brookline owned.
that's what I thought.
I think the school department has jurisdiction or
yeah, that's what the word is, control.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so they're not really residential. That
I
was
don't
my
think they're
understanding.
residential. I think that's a stretch. You know, they'd like to do it, but it's a stretch, and we do it. I mean, that's the part that's even more important.
So in other words, when you're on, you know, the proposed amendment to apply to all private property, I think when you're in a public school of Brookline, you're not on private property, you're on town property with the control of the district.
Yes.
But it's really not
Yeah,
private property
I-
anyway, so it wouldn't affect this.
I'm surprised he said it was
Yeah.
residential, because it's really a stretch.
Yeah, yeah.
Andy, do you want to do the MASC?
Oh, sorry,
Delegates.
is that on today's docket? Or-
Yeah,
Oh, yes, that's right. The other thing we need to do, hold on, let me just pull up the docket, is to appoint a delegate and an alternate for the MASC annual business meeting. And so I would like to nominate Suzanne to be the delegate and Sarah to be the alternate. I believe both of them have expressed willingness to be in those roles.
Seconded.
All right.
okay, we have to vote, I guess, right? Take a vote?
Yes.
Yeah. Jesse?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Abstain?
Oh, you can vote for yourself.
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, is that it, Andy?
Triple the salary.
That's it for government relations.
Negotiations is next. Do you have anything for negotiations? No. Oh, who's negotiations? Who's head?
Aren't you?
Oh, am I?
Yeah.
You still are, Suzanne.
Oh, I'm still, I thought you took me off, Andy.
Negotiations was
Oh, you put me,
dormant.
So quiet.
we're dormant right now. We're not doing anything. Okay, Stephen, policy review.
Thanks. So we met last week. We had a meeting with, there were 3 topics on the meeting. One was the discussion of our work process, which thank you for everyone's patience as we continue to hash out what exactly is our work process this year. We talked about how the work process is going to be a few things. One is as we work on the substantive revisions of existing policies or on new policies, that will proceed pretty much as we've proceeded in the past. But on the revisions of entire sections, we're just kind of try to focus on changes with regard to the Brookline context and with regard to changes in state law, statute, regulation that hopefully will be delivered to us with the assistance of MASC, with a consultant from MASC. So non-value-based changes, that'll be that part of the policy subcommittee docket. And then we'll have our discussion section as well. So at the last meeting, we had that discussion of the work process. Then we had our first meeting on the coordination of a PSB mobile device policy. I think it was 8 or 9 of PSB principals submitted their school-based pilot policy. There was a lot of overlap because principals worked together on this. We reviewed a lot of these policies. Principals contribute what they thought some of the core ideas behind these policies. I think knock on wood, it shouldn't be that difficult, I think, to put together a district-wide policy that has a K-8 section and a section for VHS, because there were some pretty obvious core concepts, including, well, I won't go through them what they are, but I thought there was a lot of consensus there, and the principals have been exceedingly helpful in helping us identify what they are. And then we went on to review a lot of Section J. Some of Section J we're going to be tackling specifically, like we're going to be looking at the attendance policy in next month's meeting. That's part of Section J. We're going to be looking at some of Section J, like hate speech and the sections on bullying, anti-discrimination policy, and so on. We reviewed fairly recently, so making non-value-based changes to it, making contextual updates to it isn't that important because we did that fairly recently. So we looked at 6 or 7 subsections of Section J and hashed out a review process. This is going to be a much more boring subcommittee than it's ever been before. So we worked out that we're all going to take this part of Section J, mark it up, send a version of it to Carolyn for her to integrate before November, which is when we're going to take this up again. We're going to stagger these things every other month so we have time to really review it. And then that block will be the review of the integrated draft so that by the end of it, we hopefully can come to an agreement on it and present an integrated draft of it to the school committee with our changes highlighted. Next month, we're going to review attendance policy at the request of principals, and everyone is invited to submit their comments on this policy to me. Betsy has sent around, I believe, Betsy, the draft of that, or was that just to the policy subcommittee? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Just to policy.
She said just to policy.
Just to policy? Okay. And we're also going to start reviewing the student code of conduct. So that's what we're going to take up in October. And thank you, Andy, for taking the review of the warrant articles away from the policy subcommittee. It's nice to have been unburdened of that responsibility.
Welcome.
Helen?
Yeah, so Stephen, I looked at a little bit of your minutes. I didn't get a chance to come to the meeting. And if I can be helpful in terms of some of the residency stuff, I remember when we voted that and the issues and why we did things. So it may not be clear exactly why things are in there or why they aren't.
Houses.
Huh?
The 21 houses.
Yes, yes.
That would be great, Helen. That would be great.
Yeah, so I'd be happy to go over that, and I'm sure Rebecca Stone would be happier even to tell you exactly how
Yeah.
they went and visited each one of those properties.
That makes me remember that of note in our, is it? What is it? We're going to review in Section J. That's going to include a subsection that we already have a draft revision to. That's the placement policy. So that's going to come up in November. So when we present to the school committee a redrafted Section J, it's going to include that section, which has already been substantively revised. So that should take that off of the backlog. Anything else from anyone else in the subcommittee? Go ahead, Ellen.
Wasn't that revised but not as temporary?
That was revised but never
Was
passed
it
by the
1 year
subcommittee.
to see
So-
how it would work?
That was the proposal, but it was not passed.
Oh, so nothing happened?
Yeah, it wasn't passed. So when this section comes up for review by the full school committee, that will be in it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Additional liaisons or updates? Anyone have anything? Helen?
Sorry, I'm talking so much today, but I happened to be at the STEPS board this morning. I'm the liaison to STEPS to Success, and actually it was a really great meeting. They now have a full complement of staff. They had had a lot of turnover for a while and things, people leaving and positions not filled. They are now totally filled. They're working on getting a consultant to begin K through 2, which we voted some of the money for that, I know, for our STEPS staff, or something that we did within our budget. They're looking to do that. And one good piece of information that we can, good news, as they say on NBC News, the good news tonight, 23 students from STEPS senior class enrolled in 4-year colleges this year, and that's 75% of the seniors. Plus, the ones who didn't, they were working very hard with them on alternatives. Some were working, some were going to two-year colleges, and some into internships. So it was, things have sort of turned the corner, I think, in many respects, and it's a good thing.
Jesse?
Yeah, I just want to give a quick summary of the CPAC meeting that I attended this past Friday morning. The bulk of the meeting was spent on the new IEP process. The teachers had already been through it, but the mostly parents who were at the meeting at Town Hall, downstairs, actually, here we are in Town Hall, that's right, had a lot of questions about it, and it was a very thorough presentation from OSS. And then I gave a brief presentation, a couple slides about the new composition of the school committee and the different liaisons that we serve or function on in terms of it's off the website of all the different committees. And there were a lot of like sort of gasps and, oh, like, you guys are all over everywhere, sort of liaising with every single place in town that's possible. And I also explained to them for each of us, if we were the chair of a committee, so they know like who the person is for finance, DEI, et cetera. And then asked them if there was anything else we could do to smooth the communication between any of their needs and us, and asking them to be sure that from time to time during this coming year, they feel comfortable in reaching out to us to give to get on the docket to present to us anything that's going on in their community that would be helpful for us to hear from, and they appreciated that as well. And so it was a solid 90-minute meeting, and then
Thank you.
good, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, new business? And we can adjourn.
Oh, my God.